Tonight, let us venture deep into the icy annals of history, back to February 1899, when an extraordinary Arctic invasion, known as the Great Arctic Outbreak or the St. Valentine's Day Blizzard, swept across the United States with unrelenting fury. This was no ordinary winter storm. It was a historic cold wave that plunged temperatures to record lows from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast and beyond, blanketing vast regions in heavy snow and ice, altering landscapes and lives in ways still echoed in weather records today. Picture timber-framed homes groaning under the burden of accumulating frost, the sharp howl of winds seeping through every seam and crevice, and breaths turning to stinging vapor in air so frigid it bit deep into the lungs. Survivors spoke of a winter that etched itself indelibly into memory, a relentless assault that tested human endurance like few others before or since. Before we immerse ourselves fully, allow me to extend a warm greeting to this serene gathering for tales of the past. Whether you're joining from the heart of America, the shores of Europe, the bustling cities of Asia, or any corner of the globe, it brings me joy that you've discovered this peaceful corner tonight. I'd love to hear, where are you tuning in from this evening, and at what hour, be it late night or early dawn, does this narrative reach you? If you haven't done so yet, consider giving this a thumbs up. Join the community for more calming historical journeys, and share in the comments the eras or events you'd like explored in future stories. Now, wrap yourself in a cozy throw, pour a steaming mug of herbal tea or rich hot chocolate, and ease into a restful spot. Let your muscles relax, your breaths deepen and slow, as we drift gently into the profound chill of that fateful February in 1899. The earliest warnings arrived subtly, almost teasingly, as though the atmosphere were gathering its strength for a mighty release. In the deep south, where citrus orchards typically basked in mild winter sunlight, growers rose one morning to discover a thin, glittering layer of ice coating their groves, leaves and fruits encased in a fragile sheen that foreshadowed devastation. Poultry fluttered uneasily in coops, picking up on the shifting pressure, while horses pawed restlessly in stables, their exhalations forming fleeting clouds in the cooling air. Along the mighty Mississippi, households observed a slate-gray canopy thickening overhead as delicate flakes began their descent, lazy at first, twirling like downy seeds, then accelerating until the sky brimmed with swirling white. Young ones fogged window panes with their breath, wide-eyed at the wondrous shift, even as parents anxiously tallied remaining cords of wood for the hearth. As the system intensified, gales roared over expansive prairies, whipping snow into vast, undulating curtains that erased horizons. Familiar landmarks, fence lines, roadways, and open fields vanished beneath an ever-rising sea of powder. Chimney smoke twisted horizontally in the blasts, and shutters banged insistently as if the tempest itself sought entry. Yet amid this growing power there lingered an ethereal allure. The soft glow of oil lamps danced warmly behind ice-laced panes, creating intricate frostwork resembling delicate filigree. The crisp air carried a clean, almost mineral sharpness, evoking distant northern realms. And despite the numbing bite on exposed skin, the snowfall brought a profound quietude, muffling the world in a tranquil, dreamlike veil. But this was merely the prelude. As darkness fell deeper, the outbreak's full ferocity emerged. What had been light and intermittent became dense and ceaseless, battering eaves with a persistent thumping cadence reminiscent of urgent fists. Panes clouded over with thickening rime, isolating families within their modest dwellings as visibility dwindled to nothing in a vortex of driven flakes. The earlier enchantment gave way to foreboding, enveloped in an eerie, oppressive stillness. In rural communities throughout the heartland, kerosene lamps burned sparingly to conserve fuel, their faint light casting elongated shadows across plank floors. Kin gathered tightly near cast-iron stoves, where logs of oak and hickory popped and sparked like a vital pulse defying the void outside. The rich aroma of seasoned wood mingled with the metallic chill radiating from vibrating stovepipes shaken by relentless gusts. From time to time, a brave soul would pry the door ajar for a glimpse, only to recoil from a sudden influx of powdery crystals hurled inward like frozen shards. On outlying homesteads, men and older boys layered scarves, coats, and hides before venturing into the whiteout to check on beasts. Each laborious stride sank into drifts reaching mid-thigh or higher, fabrics stiffening into rigid shells from the extreme cold. Records show temperatures plummeting below zero even in southern states, with places like Atlanta hitting -9 degrees Fahrenheit and New Orleans a staggering 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Cattle huddled in drafty shelters, shivering as their warm breaths crystallized rapidly on rafters. Equines neighed anxiously, stamping iced ground, their coats rimed with hoarfrost where moisture had frozen solid. Livestock losses mounted across the nation, with thousands perishing in the unprecedented freeze. For countless households, the storm erased everyday noises. Songbirds fell silent or succumbed en masse. Reports documented devastating impacts on species like bluebirds, meadowlarks, and quail. Even nocturnal creatures seemed to retreat, leaving only the wind's mournful wail to pierce the night. The familiar rumble of carts along rutted paths grew faint, overtaken by the creak of branches bending under heavy rime and the deep, sorrowful sigh of gales sweeping through meadows and hollows. The atmosphere itself felt laden, thick and piercing, searing the chest with every inhale as temperatures plunged to unprecedented depths. Even Washington, D.C. recorded a chilling -15 degrees Fahrenheit, a mark that endures as the capital's all-time low. Amid this hardship, pockets of tender solace persisted. In humble kitchens, women tended simmering pots of modest soup crafted from root cellars' dwindling stores of potatoes, carrots, and preserved pork, the gentle, savory steam offering a brief shield from the encroaching freeze. Young ones, swaddled in patched blankets, shared hushed tales by flickering candlelight, eyelids drooping as exhaustion set in, while elders murmured devotions, fingering rosaries in hopes of divine reprieve. The tempest had ceased being a mere passerby. It had taken residence, enveloping the countryside in an unbreakable frozen embrace. With each passing hour, it dawned on everyone that this surpassed a typical seasonal fury. It marked the onset of an extraordinary, bone-chilling ordeal that would etch itself into national memory. By the following day, the Arctic onslaught exposed its harshest edge. What began as an intense overnight barrage evolved into a prolonged, smothering blockade, bearing down on dwellings, outbuildings, and croplands without mercy. Snow accumulations soared, erasing boundary lines completely and rendering the terrain a vast, featureless expanse resembling an undulating, icy sea. Eaves groaned perilously under the immense load, tiles splintering with sharp cracks, while pendulous ice spears, some reaching lengths of several feet, dangled from overhangs, catching faint daylight and deadly glimmers. In coastal cities from the Carolinas northward, thoroughfares lay entombed,
Storefronts remained barricaded, entrances blocked by impenetrable barriers of packed powder. Shopkeepers, anticipating routine trade in staples like grain or sweets, found themselves confined indoors, powerless to clear paths. The customary clamor of equine traffic and laden carts fell silent, supplanted by an uncanny void along boulevards now transformed into deep, narrow gullies carved through endless white. Journeys that once seemed routine turned perilous undertakings. Locomotives ground to halts on glazed rails, massive drive wheels immobilized by thick frost, despite crews' desperate efforts to fire boilers higher, plumes of soot billowing futilely into leaden skies. Travelers bundled inside compartments trembled as interiors cooled relentlessly, visible puffs of breath mingling with the lingering odor of burning coal that proved no match for the invading chill. Historical reports note numerous lines paralyzed for days, stranding passengers in remote cuts. In rural areas, the fight for existence intensified. Isolated homesteaders, severed from kin or markets, relied solely on pantry reserves. Stored produce like beets and parsnips grew vital, their hearty fragrance rising as they bubbled in cauldrons. Loaves, formerly fresh each dawn, were now doled out sparingly, portions shrinking steadily. Households tallied remaining fuel stacks with growing anxiety, calculating endurance against an unrelenting assault, while devastating freezes ravaged southern orchards and claimed countless heads of cattle and poultry nationwide. As evening descended, the mercury sank deeper into extremes so profound that celestial lights appeared locked in place against the ink-black vault. Glass panes bloomed with intricate interior frost patterns, cleared only by fleeting palm prints seeking a view outward. The gale's lament turned into an unending haunting keen, as though spectral forces encircled every isolated structure. Yet endurance prevailed. Extra coverings were piled high, supplications offered softly, hearths nourished with whatever scraps remained. A quiet fortitude burned on, warding off hopelessness like a steadfast ember in obscurity, bolstered by the shared conviction that relief must arrive before long. The great Arctic invasion pressed onward unrelentingly. Daybreak arrived, though scarcely noticeable. The overcast hung low and bloated with yet more precipitation, yielding no warm sunrise, merely a subtle dimming of twilight tones. In countless abodes, direct sunlight stayed obscured, its subtle influence betrayed only by shifting gloom across interiors. Folks arose stiffly, joints aching from the pervasive chill that infiltrated planks and foundations no matter the precautions. On a modest homestead near the rolling hills of Kentucky, the household roused from fitful rest. Delicate ice crystals adorned interior walls like sparkling veneer in the weak glow, and each person's exhalations had lingered as frosty veils over their coverings throughout the endless night. The littlest one, a girl of just 5 summers, chafed her palms briskly, her tiny digits prickling from the pervasive freeze that seeped through every layer. Her mother enveloped her in yet another comforter, its threads carrying a subtle whiff of dried blooms from the linen press, lavender tucked away in balmier seasons, evoking fleeting echoes of verdant days now buried deep. As they moved to the hearthroom, the father knelt by the stove, rousing dying coals with tender coaxing. He arranged the final bundle of cordwood with measured care, each piece devouring flames too swiftly, the blaze snapping voraciously as resinous pops released bursts of fragrant haze. The space warmed gradually, laced with the loamy tang of charred timber and the subtle sizzle of pitch yielding to heat. They clustered near,
drawn to that slender halo of solace, even as the gale outside hammered the casements like relentless surf against a battered hull.
This scene echoed through hamlets and metropolises alike, kinfolk awakening, quaking, and forging fleeting havens from the encroaching void. Tubers simmered in soot-streaked kettles, husks bursting open to unleash clouds of hearty, grounding vapor that perfumed hearthsides. Where beans lingered for grinding, the resulting brew ran pale and scant, yet its acrid heat was savored like nectar, a ritual anchoring the day. Each modest gesture, igniting a wick, swirling a ladle, feeding the blaze, stood as a bulwark against the interminable frost, a testament to ingenuity amid scarcity. Beyond the thresholds, the powder had devoured all traces of the known world. Fruit-bearing stands loomed half-entombed, boughs sheathed in radiant rime that weighed them perilously low. Southern citrus groves, unaccustomed to such onslaughts, suffered catastrophic losses, with estimates of 10,000 orange trees alone perishing in Florida's panhandle, crippling the nascent industry for years. Surviving fowl clustered in feathered clumps within coops, plumage fluffed against the bite, gazes vacant from exhaustion. Even the waterways, typically alive with current and murmur, slumbered beneath armored sheets of glaze, their flows arrested as if the planet held its collective sigh in the tempest's thrall. For wayfarers stranded amid hamlets, ingenuity became the line between peril and persistence. Some hunkered in forsaken sheds, barricading drafts with baled fodder. Others sculpted burrows from the drifts themselves, hollowing sanctuaries where body heat mingled with insulated powder to stave off lethality. Accounts from the era describe such snow caves saving lives in the Midwest, where drifts reached 20 feet in places like Omaha, Nebraska. As twilight loomed anew, a pall hung over every dwelling, an unvoiced query throbbing in shared glances. How protracted could this siege endure, and what reserves of spirit remained to weather it? The fifth evening draped the realm in a leaden pall, gloom descending prematurely as if daylight had yielded the field outright. Gales honed to razor edges, their wail escalating to piercing cries that raked gullies and barrens. Each timber's protest, each arbor's lament in the dooryard rang amplified, laced with the dread of imminent fracture under duress. Structural failures abounded, with roofs collapsing across the plains from accumulations exceeding 50 inches in spots. Within, clans upheld lifelines of routine. In a modest timbered nook by Tennessee's ridges, an elder woman tended a cauldron of stock simmered from poultry remnants, augmented by desiccated bulbs from the root bin. The essence was subdued, barely substantial, yet it wafted through the confines like balm, hinting at sustenance despite portions that scarcely sated hunger. Such economies stretched meager larders, where a single hen might feed a family of 6 over days. The young clustered nearer, faces flushed from the pervasive chill, palms extended toward the hearth where tongues of fire danced, etching the overhead with wavering amber. Yet the freeze brooked no quarter. Buckets of drawn water solidified by morn, mirrors of crystal atop. Rising loaves petrified mid-proof, rigid as stone. The very metal of appliances yielded heat grudgingly, its embrace confined to immediate proximity. Venturers into the fray returned with lashes fringed in hoarfrost, inhalations scorching like embers. Footwear rigidified, hides splitting at seams, and wrappings congealed where flakes had melted and refrozen. Medical logs from the time tally frostbite claims in the thousands, with exposed flesh blackening swiftly below 20 degrees Fahrenheit wind chills. Over rural expanses, the onslaught etched hush into the fabric of existence.
No conveyances stirred, no prints scarred the lanes. Powder entombed barriers and thresholds, reshaping settlements into labyrinths of mounds. Beacon-like lamps pulsed dimly from remote steadings, golden sparks gulped by the ashen shroud. For the sequestered, those remote gleams across meadows evoked distant luminaries, visible yet unattainable, fueling a poignant ache. Resilience, however, flickered undimmed. In one blizzard-lashed burg, folk converged upon a communal refuge, merging scant provisions. A cask of poems circulated, their tart juiciness relished as banquet fare. Narratives unfurled by the blaze, tones subdued yet resolute, kindling camaraderie from recollection. A voice evoked bygone solstice heats, meadows of knee-high timothy rippling under amber rays, zephyrs alive with insect drone. Listeners yielded to reverie, inhaling as if the past could thaw the present, a psychological anchor, as modern studies on crisis coping affirm, where shared lore bolsters morale amid isolation. The gale thundered heedless, infiltrating fissures with amplified spite. But indoors, in those tenuous orbits of radiance, souls banded, cradling their tenuous optimism like embers. By this juncture, the Arctic vice had clenched for nigh on 7 days sans respite, imprinting indelible scars upon the soil. Mounds soared past a grown man's stature, rearing as alabaster ramparts that engulfed railings, vehicles, and lesser annexes. Trails of yore dissolved utterly. Outbuildings emerged as anomalous swells under the mantle, betrayed solely by protruding ridges. To breach the exterior was to navigate an alien terrain, bearings obliterated, orientations indistinguishable. In lulls betwixt blasts, the quietude bordered on suffocation. One might pause amid a pasture and register naught. No avian trill, no foliage sigh, no rivulets babble. It evoked a cosmos swaddled, concealed beneath an immense eiderdamen of chill. Then resurgence, tempests refueled, saturating atmospheres with myriad stinging motes, each grazing like infinitesimal barbs. Within abodes, existence contracted to imperatives, fuel amassed with meticulous husbandry, each billet assayed for nocturnal yield. Repasts dwindled, yet bore ritual weight. In a lone grassland cottage, a woman shaped her final wheat measure into unleavened rounds, searing them upon the griddle till they crisped and suffused the air with elemental allure. Offspring masticated deliberately, each morsel a treasure. Their sire vowed foraging upon abatement, though awareness tempered such pledges to fragile solace against the unyielding pall. Some assayed the maelstrom. Attila by the Arkansas's bends gripped a bullseye lantern, resolved to assay a senior pair's welfare yonder. Its beam pierced scant amid the vortex, flakes adhering in sodden veils. Treads foundered profoundly, exertions Herculean, gasps crystallizing forthwith. Upon arrival, his whiskers dangled in frozen spikes, grasp near insensate. Relief's saline welcome met him, for the duo had braced for abandonment, a nexus of kinship, ephemeral yet ironclad, reigniting fortitude. Northward, along the Laurentian chain's skirts, the barrage intensified. Boreas-born blasts hurled frozen daggers, glazing facades in iridescent sheens. Vessels tardy to safe berth now rode iced expanses, spars protruding as skeletal relics. Great Lakes shipping halted entirely, with over 100 craft icebound, crews rationing stores amid fears of starvation, as chronicled in maritime annals. Ubiquitously, the incursion exacted toll, pairing existence to fundamentals, thermal refuge, nourishment, haven, and unyielding resolve. It was a season demanding totality, recompensing with naught but hush, rime, and the merest blush of aurora edging the firmament. The seventh sunrise unfolded under illusory truce. For a fleeting interlude, zephyrs slackened, and descent softened to gossamer veils, sifting like cinders from a remote pyre. The hush unnerved, akin to the maelstrom inhaling for reprisal. Households dazed through rime-veiled slits, beholding realms interred beneath seamless cerements of pallor. The exterior bespoke stasis, not merely thermal but temporal, as if epochs had congealed. In a modest cluster by the Ohio's serpentine course, the mantel ascended to second-floor sills, transmuting casements into egresses. Youth, chafing from confinement, gamboled upon improvised inclines abutting facades, their mirth damped by mufflers and the landscape's ponderous repose. Such levity, amid drifts topping 40 inches in Cincinnati, offered psychic respite, echoing how play sustains spirits in prolonged duress, per contemporary resilience research. For a fleeting instant, gleams of delight pierced the pervasive chill, a gentle nod to the enduring spark of joy that persists even amid profound trials. Young ones tumbling down improvised slopes, their giggles a defiant melody against the frost. But guardians summoned them indoors swiftly, wary that this brief respite might prove a mere deception from the relentless elements. Within dwellings, existence turned subdued and measured. Heavy blankets draped over entrances to confine heat to central chambers. Cauldrons bubbled steadily atop heaters, while families harvested snow from eaves and collection troughs for potable water, its crisp purity laced with subtle hints of chimney soot that had mingled in the reservoirs. Each swallow underscored the newfound value of life's most basic necessities, transforming routine into reverence. Communities forged tighter bonds through necessity. An elderly woman living alone received a steaming vessel of nourishing broth from adjacent kin, transported in insulated wrappings to retain its heat during the short trek. In gratitude, she shared her hoarded tapers, ones infused with a soft beeswax fragrance that threw warm amber pools across shadowed interiors. Such exchanges of sustenance and illumination passed between hands not for barter, but as acts of profound compassion. In outlying rural expanses, the narrative grew more unforgiving. Wanderers who had departed earlier, attempting to evade the onslaught, now lay marooned in vast open meadows and thickets. Many fashioned rudimentary igloos from compacted drifts, padding them with evergreen boughs for insulation, their modest campfires trailing slender plumes into the pallid heavens. Others sought refuge in deserted outstructures, subsisting on remnant feed from troughs, the confined air thick with the musty blend of hay, flickering flames, and condensed exhalations, a raw testament to the proximity of endurance and peril. As dusk approached yet again, a somber veil descended, and an intuitive stillness enveloped the terrain. Inhabitants felt the impending resurgence. The tempest had not concluded. It was merely amassing vigor for a fiercer reprisal. Households nestled deeper under layered coverings, exchanging soft reassurances not solely for solace, but to counter the encroaching void that loomed to engulf all sound. That tranquility shattered swiftly. As a slender moon ascended, shrouded by hazy strata, the maelstrom rekindled with renewed malice, roaring over ridges, clattering casements, and hurling stinging barrages against every barrier. Gales infiltrated the tiniest fissures, sliding beneath thresholds, keening through locks, and coiling into spaces as sudden, thieving currents that sapped heat in moments. The intermission had offered no mercy. It served only as the buildup to amplified assault. On Virginia's agrarian spreads, Kin overheard arboreal giants protesting in agony outdoors, ice-laden boughs fracturing with abrupt snaps, their resounding crashes echoing into the obscurity. Stable portals banged rhythmically, while beasts stirred restlessly, cloven feet thudding dull thumps on glazed planks. Equines whinnied in subdued anxiety, their vapors forming spectral wisps that lingered in the gloom. Poultry fidgeted on perches, unsettled by the alien deep freeze. In one steadfast homestead, the gale's might rattled the framework itself. The household had consolidated bedding into a solitary chamber, piling comforters and throws densely across the ground. Elders, progenitors, and offspring reclined in proximity, their collective warmth a shared bulwark. A pot simmered lowly on the appliance, infusing the area with the subtle essence of simmering stock. With every furious blast, the young drew nearer, finding reassurance in familial closeness, though traces of apprehension danced in their gazes. In settled areas, roadways dissolved anew beneath surging accumulations. Lamp beams failed to penetrate the opaque veil, their radiant halos devoured immediately by the raging pallor. Rare venturers secured lifelines from portals to enclosures, tethering themselves against disorientation in the whiteout to ensure safe return. Historical accounts describe such ropes as vital lifelines in northeastern blizzards, preventing countless losses amid zero visibility. Powder surged against structures like an inexorable swell, inundating passages and ascending steps until ground levels lay interred. Window panes emitted faint luminescence, akin to vessels adrift on turbulent waters. Deeper southward, in realms where profound freezes bordered on inconceivable, the toll proved particularly devastating. Citrus orchards that had weathered innumerable mild seasons succumbed overnight, fruits solidifying on limbs, husks rupturing with audible pops as sap expanded and burst. This unprecedented intrusion ravaged northern Florida's groves nearly entirely, compelling growers to relocate operations farther south in subsequent decades, reshaping the industry's geography permanently as documented in climactic records. The cloying aroma of spoiled citrus wafted over orchards, oddly intertwined with the crisp mineral bite of pervasive frost, a poignant marker of nature's abrupt betrayal. Growers lingered in vigil, lamps flickering in gloved hands, confronting the stark reality that years of labor had vanished beneath the unrelenting freeze, which devastated Florida's northern groves so thoroughly that the industry shifted permanently southward in the decades that followed. As time wore on, the onslaught appeared inexhaustible, its thunderous bellow an unending chorus, as if the heavens themselves vented boundless fury. Still, behind sturdy walls, kinfolk drew nearer, murmuring invocations, recounting cherished tales, and steadfastly refusing to yield ground to dread over optimism. Deep down, they reassured one another that no tempest, however savage, could rage eternally. Daylight emerged merely as a subdued radiance filtering through the maelstrom. Direct sunlight remained concealed, the firmament a swirling expanse of slate, and the atmosphere bore a razor-like edge that nipped fiercely at any bare flesh. Even indoors, the chill insinuated itself like an unseen force, etching delicate lacework of rime along rafters and casings, sparkling subtly in the muted glow, as though the season had staked dominion not just outdoors, but within the sanctuaries themselves. In a riverside settlement beside the Mississippi, residents roused to discover their central thoroughfare entombed so profoundly that only lantern tops and upper storefront panes protruded. Ground-level portals proved futile, Inhabitants ascended or descended via upstairs openings, employing stepladders or knotted cords to navigate the immense piles. The accumulation had compacted into a firm, unyielding mass under gusting winds, crunching sharply beneath footsteps like splintering crystal. Carved passages morphed into slender corridors, flanked by towering barriers, the confined space laden with the raw scent of compacted soil and ice. Vital rail networks, arteries of trade and migration, ground to a standstill. Lines lay obscured under vast ridges of glaze, engines forsaken with drivetrains encased in impenetrable shells. Contemporary chronicles detail widespread paralysis, with locomotives immobilized for days and commerce halted across the nation. Crews labored valiantly to liberate one, picks ringing dully against metal, yet the tempest's momentum rendered their toil fleeting. Fuel depots dwindled, prompting stranded travelers at depots to huddle around modest braziers, palms extended over dim coals, the pungent haze of scorched residue blending with incoming flurries whenever entrances parted.
Across rural vistas, young ones donned makeshift layers of fabric remnants. Some sported hand-sewn gloves fashioned from repurposed hosiery by mothers whose digits throbbed while stitching under faint illumination. Faces glowed crimson from the bite, mouths parched and fissured, yet their gazes radiated quiet determination. They hauled vessels brimming with powder to thaw for hydration, containers ponderous and frost-rimmed, their subdued chuckles echoing faintly amid the oppressive calm. In contrast, southern realms accustomed to milder seasons endured unprecedented ruin. Mighty streams solidified entirely, halting crossings mid-voyage and sealing aquatic life below. Ferries stranded, markets shuttered. In coastal hubs like Charleston, folk kindled open blazes along avenues, clustering for mutual warmth, their collective murmurs blending supplication with astonishment. The briny ocean breeze clashed curiously with acrid wood smoke, underscoring the anomaly of this frozen interlude. Throughout, the Arctic invasion wavered not, molding the terrain into forms both harrowing and mesmerizing. Mounds swelled like alabaster ridges, pendants of ice dangled from overhangs and sheds like crystalline ornaments, catching stray gleams when fleeting rays pierced the overcast. Peril and splendor intertwined in those glacial spans, where each new dawn offered no assurance of thaw, merely another chapter of perseverance, fueled by obligation, affection, and the innate drive toward future light. By the 10th day, this extraordinary cold wave transcended mere weather. It embodied an omnipresent entity, embedding itself profoundly in daily existence. Folks referenced it in lowered voices, as if it might overhear. It had evolved from an external force to an internal burden, its nip infiltrating every facet of waking and slumbering hours. Thousands of cattle and poultry succumbed nationwide, bodies rigid under the mantle, amplifying the era's hardships. In heartland regions, outbuildings sagged perilously from rooftop burdens. Tillers scaled rungs armed with implements to alleviate the load, grips numb in thick wrappings, exhalations labored and fleeting. The material was sodden and burdensome, each shovelful taxing weary limbs. Inaction courted catastrophic failure as collapses claimed structures in overloaded areas. The rhythmic scrape of tools on timber resounded over barren expanses like distant chimes, punctuated solely by the gale's persistent dirge. Indoors, repasts diminished further. One household transformed coarse grain into dilute gruel, accented with a sparing trickle of preserved sweetener from cellar reserves. The subtle sweetness mingled with rising vapors,
portions modest, yet sufficient to ease weary frames. Youth savored deliberately, gazes somnolent, as elders feigned satiety, yielding shares to the vulnerable. In settlements, sanctuaries flung wide their portals as refuges, benches relocated to accommodate bedding, beacons and fatigued forms depleted of resources. Aromas of melted tallow intertwined with sodden fabrics and lingering hearth fumes. Evening chants rose gently, not bold proclamations, but soothing refrains against despondency, harmonies undulating like flame shadows to sustain through nocturnal trials. Such communal havens, as period accounts affirm, proved vital in bolstering spirits amid isolation. Yet outside these tenuous oases, severity exacted grim tribute. Beasts perished exposed where shelter proved inaccessible, forms stiffened beneath layers. Fruit-bearing stands fractured under glacial encasement, trunks rending with nocturnal reports. Even formidable currents hushed utterly, glazed so thickly that crossings on foot posed little risk. The ether bore palpable heft, scorching passages with inhalations, yet glimmers of tenacity endured. Kin exchanged fuel stacks, felling and dividing under ashen skies. Women convened to mend frayed outerwear, threads darting in subdued radiance. Men alternated forging linkages through the expanse, ensuring interconnectedness. Each gesture of solidarity shone as a steadfast beacon amid the fury, dim but indomitable. The invasion persisted, yet so did the resolve of those ensnared within. By the 11th day, the mantle had integrated seamlessly into existence. It adhered to all exteriors, infiltrated fissures, and accumulated in inaccessible nooks. Overhangs bowed deeply, enclosures vanished wholly, avenues reshaped into rolling alabaster swells extending boundlessly. Known markers alienated themselves. A familiar shed now evoked a fortified mound, ingress scarcely discernible under escalating piles. Within dwellings, households innovated compact zones of respite against intrusion. Blazes maintained vigilantly, timber apportioned meticulously, each glowing coal a modest triumph. Fragrances of seasoned hardwood blended with hints of conserved produce or simmering tubers. Coverings erected as barriers around resting areas, crafting cozy enclaves shielding from ceaseless barrage. Externally, gusts honed new. Flakes stung like fine points, crystallizing lashes and rhyming locks. Treads sank into crusted surfaces atop piles, progress arduous as if the medium itself repelled advance. Venturers knotted guidelines amid structures or trunks, charting safe traverses through opacity. Necessity compelled such risks. Creatures contended likewise. Equines paced enclosures for circulation, vapors condensing swiftly on overheads. Fowl burrowed in recesses, plumage expanded, while bovines clustered for collective insulation. Beyond, untamed life prowled covertly, imprints fleeting ere erasure by breezes. Amid this iced domain, vitality lingered, often veiled beneath pristine veils. For inhabitants, cadence distilled to essence, endurance. Households clustered nearer to hearths, deriving solace from collective closeness as flames danced low. Young ones etched whimsical designs into the rime on panes with delicate fingertips, trails vanishing swiftly as the frieze reclaimed its hold. The rich aroma of crackling timber blended with the hearty, grounding notes of cellar-kept tubers and bulbs, weaving a nurturing envelope within spaces otherwise severed from the glacial exterior. Across rural spreads, accumulations extended like petrified swells over croplands, catching subtle sheens in the subdued glow. Tillers emerged warily, wielding staffs to test concealed voids, advancing with measured caution to evade sudden plunges into masked troughs. Such vigilance prevented mishaps in drifts that often concealed wells or gullies, as recounted in survivor testimonies from the era. Beasts proceeded with equal restraint. Bovines repositioned gingerly in enclosures. Equines pawed to stimulate blood flow. Poultry bunched densely in recesses, with plumage expanded maximally against the nip. Each motion demanded vigilance, forbearance, and acute sensitivity to the lingering menace. In settlements, folk sallied forth in brief, calculated forays. Loaves and meal were bartered in scant measures, kin dividing preserved stocks equitably. Lamps oscillated softly in breezes, projecting warm halos onto barriers towering above entrances. Tones remained hushed, honoring the grave quietude the tempest enforced upon the realm. These modest gestures yielded profound reassurance, evidencing that fellowship, generosity, and fortitude could flourish amid extremity. The atmosphere bore a crystalline edge, pristine and invigorating, underscoring the invasion's subdued yet omnipresent sway. Pendulous glaze adorned overhangs, splintering dim rays into fleeting prisms. Imprints lingered momentarily ere gentle sifts effaced them, symbolizing humanity's ephemeral imprint against winter's immensity. As twilight neared, the interlude assumed a reverent quality. Clans converged, trading subdued consolations. Blazes radiated consistently, heat diffusing over surfaces. They anticipated resurgence, yet savored this tenuous serenity, a chance to recuperate, fortify resolve, and cultivate aspiration. The 14th morning emerged beneath a canopy so leaden it appeared to bear down, laden with impending descent. The ether snapped with fragility, inhalations prickling faces acutely. The mantle rested dense and seamless, contoured into undulating crests and keen edges, rendering known vistas ethereal and unfamiliar. Accumulations in exposed areas reached depths necessitating tunnels for movement, transforming daily routines profoundly. Indoors, existence adhered to a prudent cadence of preservation. Hearths maintained vigilant glows, nurtured ceaselessly against intrusion. Motions flowed intentionally, swirling cauldrons, cleaving residual fuel, replenishing liquids from thawed crystals. Essences of stewed produce fused with stove's ashen bite, sustaining an ambient coziness. Offspring nestled against kin beneath piled coverings, proximity a vital defense along bases and ledges. Externally, the assault murmured its sovereignty. Stands protested under burdened boughs, fractures resounding abruptly in the stillness. Equines fidgeted in confines, treads echoing on glaze. Fowl contracted further on perches, while rare venturers outside traversed gingerly over the pall. Gales moderated to languid caresses, rippling surfaces in extended sighs rather than prior ferocity. In populated centers, valor and solidarity endured through minor deeds. Kin assisted in excavating accesses, hauling vessels for thawing or distributing remnants. Beacons swayed, yielding tender auras against alabaster facades, each luminescence a symbol of persistence amid austerity. Repasts remained elemental yet poignant, gruels, crusts, diluted stocks fostering nourishment and unity. Communal ingestion reinforced ties impervious to the elements. Narratives unfolded in murmurs, evoking balmier epics, flowing streams, verdant meadows, lulling listeners toward repose.
As obscurity reclaimed the domain, winter's veil deepened. Flames cast wavering patterns, clans intertwining in muted affirmations and devotions, forging quiet solidarity against the remote thunder. The 15th sunrise filtered a subtle argent sheen through dense strata. The exterior retained its glacial artistry, each swell a navigational trial.
Thoroughfares effaced, barriers engulfed, distant structures emerging as isolated atolls in a boundless cerulean sea. The ether hung suspended, saturated with rhyme and muteness. Within, routines pulsed softly. Blazes simmered reliably, monitored diligently for sustained radiance. Fragrances of charred logs intertwined with simmering greens, leafy stalks and sparse essences. Groups encircled heaters, forms aligned under abundant weaves, tactile closeness a treasured bulwark against encroachment. Rurally, cultivators probed quiescent expanses gingerly. Footwear plunged into compacted layers while inspecting perimeters, guiding herds indoors, carving furrows to avert blockages. Exhalations crystallized instantly, rhyming whiskers and raps intricately. Equines paced uneasily, scrapes resounding. Poultry clustered compactly, insulation maximized. In urban clusters, lamps pierced the murk dimly, illuminating elevated barriers. Exchanges encompassed fuel, victuals, or supportive grasps amid precarious traverses. Brief encounters cherished as vital sparks in the dominant frost. Youth, wearied yet spirited, engaged subdued frolics under watch, gliding modest inclines or sketching ephemeral motifs. Their subdued mirth, filtered through wrappings, rang delicate yet luminous, affirming joy's endurance. Twilight sharpened the plunge, panes blooming anew save palm-cleared ovals. Breezes escalated, keening through expanses with glacial and resinous notes. Indoors, proximity, sustenance, and murmurs wove endurance's fabric against the unyielding vigil. The 16th morning unfolded under brooding strata sagging low, as though celestial burden compressed the vault. The pall remained pristine, molded into surging eminences concealing all bearings, chimney crests and sporadic silhouettes alone betraying habitation. The realm evoked a serene yet foreboding alternate domain, yielding yet laced with subsurface perils. Indoors, existence decelerated to a deliberate cadence. Blazes maintained a vigilant glow, nurtured meticulously to sustain their vital radiance. Vessels of hydration and sparse stalks bubbled gently atop heaters, releasing tendrils of vapor that infused spaces with the hearty essence of root crops and the subtle ashen note of charred timber. Households converged tightly, forms aligning under dense weaves for mutual solace, the tactile heat of proximity a formidable guard against the inexorable nip, while subdued dialogues wove a soothing cadence akin to a tender cradle song. Rurally, cultivators proceeded with prudence, inspecting herds and alleviating profound accumulations from thresholds. Each gesture deliberate, each tread calculated, for the underlying layer had solidified into a treacherous shell prone to sudden collapse. Contemporary journals recount numerous falls into concealed depressions during such prolonged sieges. Equines paced enclosures restlessly, pounding treads to promote flow, while bovines bunched compactly, exchanging thermal refuge in dense groupings. Poultry and lesser creatures burrowed into recesses, plumage maximized against the bite. Even untamed fauna navigated warily over the glazed terrain, faint imprints swiftly veiled by ongoing sifts. In settled areas, avenues evoked spectral pallor. Beacons swayed subtly in zephyrs, projecting tender amber halos onto towering alabaster barriers. Kin exchanged fuel stacks, apportioned modest rations, or collaborated in excavating accesses to entombed portals. Such modest generosities proved indispensable, radiating greater solace than any robust inferno. Tones stayed subdued, honoring the profound muteness the mantle imposed. Nonetheless, every exchange fortified linkages that nurtured optimism. Young ones seized fleeting instances of delicate delight. They glided down modest swells, imprinted palms into yielding powder to craft ephemeral marks, and shared hushed merriment filtered through wrappings. Despite the sting on exposed features, their communal frolic affirmed that amid unyielding trials, existence retained sparks of radiance and comfort. As obscurity descended anew, the maelstrom resurged remotely, its thunder softened by prior veils. Indoors, clans nestled deeper, trading invocations and minor consolations. Hearths radiated evenly, etching mild patterns over surfaces. Amid the nocturnal hush, pulses synchronized in serene cadence, a subtle, resolute rebuttal to the implacable exterior freeze. The 17th sunrise emerged muted and motionless, yet the assault's vitality lingered in each sly draft, infiltrating minute fissures. The pall draped seamlessly like a plush cerement over the terrain, ascending in contoured mounds that obscured known elevations and trails. Overhangs drooped perilously, enclosures effaced under surging crests of pallor. Arboreal forms hushed and burdened with rime, limbs arching like delicate frameworks. The domain evoked a serene glacial realm, awe-inspiring yet unforgiving. Within, kin mastered preservation's harmonies. Blazes demanded perpetual oversight, each coal invaluable. Aromas of seasoned hardwood fused with subtle hints of parboiled tubers, leafy greens, and dilute essences, crafting a nurturing shroud against the piercing intrusion. Youth reclined beneath abundant layers, visages rosy from proximity, gazes somnolent as guardians offered gentle affirmations, caressing tresses or laying palms on heated forms. The slightest contact evolved into deep reassurance, underscoring that interpersonal ties could withstand the most ferocious season. Cultivators sallied forth warily, assessing confined beasts. Powder grated beneath treads, irregular and firm, while breezes pricked bare flesh like fine points. Equines fidgeted, pounding and exhaling veils that crystallized rapidly on timbers. Bovines clustered for insulation, vapors forming brief halos. Fowl contracted into secluded spots, plumage expanded, as felines and canines sought proximity to people. The iced expanse, resplendent yet perilous, exacted forbearance in every advance. In populated hubs, the ether hummed softly with steadfastness. Folk divided timber, parceled scant victuals, and forged linkages through mounds. Lamps pulsed dimly amid gusts, yielding mild amber pools over pallid facades. Even elemental deeds, extending a cover, a compassionate phrase, or a mutual tale, ignited aspiration surpassing the freeze. Youth during supervised interludes exterior, imprinted digits and countenances into yielding layers, forging motifs and exchanging playful confidences.
Their subdued glee, damped by mufflers, ascended like a mild zephyr of comfort amid the chilled void, a silent defiance of the tempest's hold. As twilight deepened, gusts intensified, keening mournfully over alabaster flats. Indoors, groups intertwined nearer, deriving fortitude from blaze, collective heat, and tranquil encouragements. The gale might thunder onward, yet hearthside pulses endured stable, aspiration steadfast, affection subtly indomitable. The 18th dawn unfolded in tenuous repose, an illusory pause in the maelstrom's cadence. The vault spanned ashen iron, boundless above the iced vista. The mantle persisted dense and pristine, molded into surging eminences and masked troughs. Each limb sheathed in glaze, catching faint glimmers in subdued radiance, while eaves labored under stratified burdens, certain yielding dangerously. The outbreak's accumulations in northern cities like New York exceeded 20 inches in spots, with drifts amplifying isolation dramatically. The exterior mirrored a hushed marvel, an arena of perpetual alertness. Indoors, clans advanced with serene intent. Hearths sustained reliable luminescence, curated diligently, trailing slender soot plumes skyward and saturating confines with coziness.
Fragrances of bubbling produce, crisping loaves atop griddles, and mild resinous haze forged a protective envelope. Offspring drew toward guardians, weaves clutched firmly, attuned to the rhythmic harmony of pulses and inhalations, a modest yet unbreakable bulwark against lateral encroachment. Rurally, persistence necessitated vigilance and restraint. Tillers assessed herds meticulously, grips rigid in ponderous mitts, while guiding creatures, relocating fodder, and clearing conduits to annexes. Each progression over crusted medium intentional, poised against latent perils below. Equines neighed and pawed, dispersing brief vapor bursts that solidified swiftly in acrid ether. Fowl murmured faintly on perches, canines and felines aligning with kin for shared refuge amid unceasing bite. In urban clusters, routines persisted in muted tenacity. Beacons charted traverses, illuminating tender orioles over obstructed lanes. Kin proffered reserves, timber, sparse sustenance, or unwavering fellowship, transforming solicitude into essential anchors in the glacial void. Tones tempered, preserving fragile equilibrium of radiance and stillness, yet humanity's essence gleamed in every motion and murmur. During ephemeral outdoor respites, young ones uncovered tenuous merriment. They sketched designs with encased digits, formed compact spheres, or descended mild inclines, glee filtered through coverings, yet vivid against the ashen backdrop. Such innocent pursuits reaffirmed that vitality bore illumination and comfort, notwithstanding the invasion's tenacity. As gloom reclaimed, the tempest's bellow echoed in remote blasts, clattering casements and flexing stands with frozen grasp. Still, behind barriers, households converged, channeling vigor from inferno, mutual heat, and subdued solace. The Arctic fury might appear boundless beyond, yet hearthward fortitude, aspiration, and gentle kinship crafted an inviolable haven. The 19th morning broke ashen and fragile, faint auroral seepage piercing dense pendant strata. The pall extended seamless, crafting undulations and crests that caught subtle sheens on crystalline facets. All known bearings engulfed under mounds, with merely uppermost vents and ridges denoting concealed dwellings. The outdoor realm spanned an immense, hushed infinity, its splendor moderated by the omnipresent peril of profound frigidity.
By mid-February 1899, the outbreak had claimed lives through exposure and disrupted supply lines nationwide, underscoring the era's vulnerability. Indoors, clans attuned to prudent perseverance's tempo. Hearths sustained through vigilant curation, minor billets divided and positioned accurately to extend luminescence across extended spans. Essences of bubbling cauldrons, parsnips, bulbs, and sparse stalks interwove with stove's charred whisper, weaving a sanctuary of ease against the glacial pressure at thresholds and casings. Households converged tightly, forms aligned beneath abundant coverings and throws, deriving solace not solely from the blaze, but profoundly from mutual proximity. Young ones' gazes, laden with drowsiness, mirrored the dancing flames, their exhalations forming tender veils that dissipated swiftly in the chamber's nurturing heat. Rurally, cultivators navigated with scrupulous precision. Equines fidgeted in enclosures, dispersing misty bursts with each breath. Bovines bunched compactly, flanks abutting in dense groupings for collective insulation. Fowl contracted into secluded spots, plumage expanded against the unyielding bite. Tillers wielded tools gingerly, etching slender conduits to outbuildings and thresholds, guiding herds towards secure havens. Conscious that the ice terrain tolerated no recklessness, where a misstep could prove costly amid drifts that concealed hazards like weakened ice or sudden drops. In settled areas, the cadence of subdued tenacity persisted. Beacons traced slender trails hewn through soaring mounds, projecting mild, wavering amber halos. Kin exchanged timber reserves, modest victual shares, and unwavering fellowship, each gesture fortifying communal ties that enabled endurance through the inexorable season. Tones stayed tempered and intentional, brimming with uplift and the mild affirmation of collective fortitude. Youth, notwithstanding the nip, unearthed ephemeral instances of tender merriment. They etched motifs in powder, imprinted encased palms into yielding layers, or descended modest inclines leisurely, their veiled chuckles a delicate melody amid the glacial vastness. In these transient delights, life's tenacity gleamed, fragile yet unyielding against the maelstrom's clasp. As dusk descended anew, gusts escalated, clattering frames and flexing rime-burdened limbs with frozen tendrils. Still, indoors, clans nestled deeper, invigorated by blazes, weaves, and interpersonal heat. The Arctic fury thundered externally, immense and ceaseless, yet hearthward thermal refuge, aspiration, and kinship crafted a perpetual haven untouched by the nocturnal freeze. The 23rd morning emerged beneath a vault burdened with leaden strata, radiance subdued and diffused, seeping as if the realm itself paused in anticipation. The pall extended boundlessly, compressed into fluid eminences that enveloped avenues, meadows, and eaves. All known contours mellowed and reformed by the onslaught, with merely chimney crests, post tips, or arboreal silhouettes hinting at prior familiarity. The ether pierced profoundly, infiltrating passages and digits acutely. Nonetheless, the muteness bore an ethereal allure, a crystalline reverie, mesmerizing yet austere. Within dwellings, kin upheld their serene perseverance. Hearths radiated consistently, curated diligently, essences of charred timber fusing with hearty notes of bubbling tubers and sparse stalks. Offspring burrowed beneath dense textiles, forms aligned against guardians or kin for mutual solace. Subtle dialogues, sporadic mild chuckles, and synchronized inhalations wove a nurturing envelope of ease and affirmation amid the invasion's enduring bite. Rurally, tillers advanced warily, each progression over rigid medium intentional, implements grating trails to sustain outbuilding accesses and herd refuges. Equines paced enclosures, pounding treads for vitality, while bovines clustered laterally. Fowl and lesser beasts contracted into alcoves, plumage maximized. Even untamed fauna imprinted subtle trails, swiftly effaced by sifts, a quiet testament to existence's subtle continuity and extremity.
In populated hubs, lamps pulsed gently, charting conduits through elevated barriers. Kin proffered timber, sustenance remnants, and tender aid to the isolated or strained. Each modest gesture evolved into a vital tether, bolstering morale and deepening communal linkages surpassing the freeze. Tones tempered and purposeful, infused with solace and subdued motivation, mirroring interpersonal tenacity. Youth persisted in seizing transient gleams, descending pliant swells cautiously, imprinting digits into powder for fleeting designs, or trading whimsical murmurs, their damped mirth infusing comfort into the iced vista, subtly affirming vitality's radiance amid unceasing fury. As twilight deepened, breezes swirled afresh, jostling casements and arching glazed boughs. Indoors, households intertwined, blazes radiating evenly, coverings clutched firmly, dialogues mild and soothing. Though the tempest thundered vast and unyielding beyond, hearthward aspiration, thermal refuge, and subdued kinship forged an impervious retreat against the glacial wrath. The 24th sunrise unfolded in a reverent tranquility, a repose bordering on hallowed. The canopy lingered subdued slate, dense with veils mellowing illumination into a mild, pervasive sheen over the pallid domain.
Mounds surged seamlessly, chiseled into fluid swells by ceaseless gales. All known conduits, enclosures, and pastures veiled under stratified cerements, morphing the vista into an oniric infinity where forms and shades undulated faintly with mild zephyrs. Within abodes, clans honed a cadence of serene perseverance. Blazes sustained resolute luminescence, billets elected prudently for enduring yield. Fragrances of bubbling stalks, hearty yet sparse, grounding, interwove with charred resinous whispers, crafting a protective shroud. Offspring reclined beneath piled layers, visages glowing from adjacency, gazes somnolent as guardians caressed tresses, murmured tender affirmations, and laid palms on diminutive forms, anchoring in mutual heat and attendance. Rurally, cultivators proceeded with muted precision. Equines fidgeted in confines, treads resounding on glaze, while bovines aligned proximally. Fowl bunched densely in recesses, plumage expanded to hoard reserves. Conduits etched through profound medium demanded wary advances, tools thudding softly against crusted surfaces. Even untamed life navigated gingerly, ephemeral imprints vanishing beneath gentle veils, a nuanced echo of vitality's quiet endurance in the iced realm. In urban clusters, beacons yielded tender aureoles onto transfigured lanes.
Kin extended availables, fuel, modest provisions, or supportive grasps along obstructed trails. Each solicitude, however minor, bore deep significance, upholding spirits and nurturing subdued communal ties. Tones mild and intentional, conveying solace, counsel, and ease amid winter's muteness. Amid unyielding nip, youth unearthed subdued delights, sketching fine motifs in powder, imprinting encased digits into pliant mounds, or descending low swells tenderly, their fleeting, veiled glee luminous against the alabaster vastness. Such modest pursuits reaffirmed comfort and existence's continuity, notwithstanding the maelstrom's clasp. As obscurity reclaimed, gusts escalated remotely, clattering frames and flexing frozen limbs. Still, Indoors, clans converged, invigorated by infernos, weaves, and mutual attendance. The Arctic bellow echoed beyond barriers, yet hearthward aspiration, fortitude, and gentle kinship crafted a steadfast, unassailable refuge amid the season's core. The 25th morning filtered a tenuous argent radiance, diffusing subtly over the pall-bound vista. The exterior appeared temporarily arrested, the onslaught's vehemence momentarily quelled, yielding an uncanny yet resplendent muteness. Accumulations swelled as mild eminences, surfaces pristine and catching frail gleams from crystalline facets in feeble aurora. Stands loomed statue-like, burdened with rime, limbs laced in intricate filigree and arching under glacial load. Even breezes moderated to murmurs, rustling twigs rather than wailing, bearing subtle resinous and glacial notes. Within, dwellings emanated coziness and subdued resolve. Hearths radiated even amber, etching wavering patterns over partitions and vaults. Essences of bubbling tubers, crisping loaves, and mild evergreen haze permeated, blending with woolen softness of coverings. Households banded about heaters, forms lined for thermal exchange, dialogues languid and soothing, akin to cardiac refrains. Youth's gazes drooped in nurturing heat, diminutive grasps intertwined in quest of mutual solace. Externally, existence unfolded in wary, intentional cadence. Tillers traversed the pallid expanses deliberately, staffs gripped firmly to essay concealed mounds and secure stable purchase. Equines pounded in position, vapors ascending from their coats as bovines aligned proximally. Subdued calls of satisfaction resonated within shelters. Fowl and lesser beasts burrowed into secluded recesses, plumage expanded like diminutive veils against the nip. The iced vista, outwardly hushed, pulsed with nuanced activity, a cadence of perseverance demanding forbearance, mindfulness, and serene fortitude. In populated centers, beacons projected tender aureoles over avenues nearly engulfed by powder. Kin imparted more than mere timber or victuals. They bestowed optimism, resolute uplift, and prudent navigation through barely discernible conduits. Dialogues tempered yet purposeful, phrases serving as subtle moorings in a realm mellowed and remolded by rime and frost. Youth unearthed subdued avenues of merriment. They etched encased palms along rime-veiled panes, sketched forms in yielding layers, and descended modest swells tenderly, their veiled chuckles wafting through the stillness like fleeting embers of comfort. Each minor gesture of delight affirmed that vitality endured, fragile yet intact amid the unceasing season. As obscurity descended, gusts murmured afresh over the glazed terrain, jostling sporadic casements and tracing gentle arcs with veils. Nonetheless, indoors blazes radiated cozily, textiles amassed densely, and households converged, pulses stable and intertwined. The maelstrom might sweep boundlessly beyond barriers, yet hearthward existence, aspiration, and the subdued tenacity of affection crafted an impregnable haven against the freeze. The 26th morning of this profound Arctic ordeal filtered a gentle, opalescent radiance scarcely illuminating the pall-bound realm. The exterior evoked contemplative stasis, mounds surging eternally like petrified swells arrested mid-surge. All facades caught faint sheens as if powdered with confectioner's glaze, while stands loomed as glacial frames, limbs etched in delicate tracery against the subdued vault. Even the gales, long unyielding, eased to tender sighs, caressing iced meadows with mild repose. Within abodes, the solace of blazes and kinship grew ever more cherished. Timbers popped mildly in heaters, trailing amber ribbons wavering over partitions and vaults. Essences of bubbling stocks, enhanced with subtle treacle or desiccated pomes, interwove with mild charred resin, forging a sanctuary of security and ease. Clans banded tightly, coverings stratified deeply, offspring reclining heads upon the rhythmic harmony of guardians' inhalations. Each motion, a palm on a limb, a murmured phrase, a communal drape, embodied solace and devotion. Externally, endurance necessitated watchfulness and restraint. Cultivators probed mounds with implements to gauge profundity, liberating accesses to outbuildings and troughs. Equines fidgeted in confines, dispersing frosty veils skyward, while bovines aligned laterally. Subdued tones echoed faintly in the hush. Fowl contracted serenely in recesses, plumage ruffled against the bite. Even minute tasks, displacing powder, guiding beasts, inspecting perimeters, exacted concentration and tranquil perseverance, a subtle harmony with the glacial domain. In urban hubs, lamps pulsed steadfastly along interred lanes. Kin exchanged fuel, modest allotments, and affirming phrases, each reinforcing communal vigor. Tones mild and intentional, infusing comfort and motivation through subdued, pall-veiled avenues, a vital tether amid winter's clasp. Offspring unearthed tender instances of delight, notwithstanding the nip. Imprinting encased palms into pliant medium, sketching rhyme motifs on casings, and descending minor eminences warily, their damped glee wafting like minute thermal sparks. Such ephemeral pursuits affirmed that amid trials, vitality bore radiance, chuckles, and fleeting intact bliss. As gloom reclaimed, breezes sighed over alabaster flats, clattering frames and flexing frozen limbs with subdued, ceaseless murmur. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles clutched firmly, dialogues tranquil and soothing. Though the Arctic fury persisted beyond enclosures, hearthward thermal refuge, linkage, and serene tenacity forged an unyielding retreat against the season's glacial hold. The 27th sunrise unfolded under a vault akin to buffed pewter, ponderous and pendant, hovering silently above the iced vista. The mantle rested dense and pristine, contoured by ceaseless blasts into fluid eminences. All conduits, pastures, and enclosures effaced beneath cerulean veils, with subtle silhouettes of eaves or vents alone denoting known locales. The ether rang keen yet brittle, bearing faint resinous glacial and subdued loamy traces of encased earth. Within dwellings, routines balanced cozily between thermal refuge, ritual, and subdued linkage. Hearths radiated consistently, amber patterns dancing over surfaces. Fragrances of bubbling tubers, sparse stalks, and sporadic sweetened gruels forged a mild bulwark against intrusions through seams. Households aligned proximally beneath piled weaves, grasps entwined, dialogues mild with tender exchanges or calming phrases. Youth reclined crowns upon progenitors' limbs, gazes somnolent, inhalations languid and stable, spirits moored by devotion and solicitude. Rurally, preservation's labors persisted with precise mindfulness. Tillers advanced intentionally through mounds, essaying with staffs to evade masked voids, grading trails to outbuildings and fodder sites, attending herds with serene diligence. Equines pounded and exhaled curling vapors. Bovines clustered with subdued calls, mingling faint timber protests under rime burdens. Fowl burrowed in alcoves, plumage maximized, while minor fauna sought every thermal crevice. Each gesture purposeful, a tempered cadence amid glacial repose. In settled clusters, beacons etched mild, wavering pools against interred avenues. Kin proffered timber, scant victuals, and motivational murmurs, weaving interconnections sustaining collectives. Tones subdued, intentional, and laden with ease, affirming that interpersonal comfort could withstand the most severe season. Offspring persisted in seizing ephemeral, tender interludes of frolic, sketching forms in yielding powder, imprinting encased palms on glazed facades, and descending minor swells warily, their veiled mirth ascending faintly through the pristine ether. Such transient delights affirmed existence's continuity, with thermal refuge, linkage, and aspiration never wholly encased by the maelstrom. As twilight deepened, gusts murmured and eddied externally, jostling casements and arcing rime-laden boughs. Still, abodes pulsed with reliable radiance. Households converged, coverings amassed densely, pulses serene and fortified. Though the Arctic vastness thundered unyieldingly beyond, hearthward vitality, affection, and mild perseverance crafted a retreat impervious to the iced realm. The 28th morning emerged in a realm mellowed by rime, the vault a subdued tableau of ashen with tenuous argent hints seeping through veils. The pall persisted dense and seamless, chiseled by ceaseless breezes into mild crests and masked troughs, all known bearings veiled, eaves and enclosures half entombed under boundless cerulean. The atmosphere rang acute yet motionless, bearing subtle, pristine notes of glaze and evergreen, each inhalation prickling delightfully in passages, a poignant echo of the nip's enduring sway. Indoors, dwellings resonated with serene preservation's harmony. Blazes sustained even luminescence, amber gleams wavering over partitions and vaults. Essences of bubbling stocks, parboiled tubers, and crisping loaves fused with heaters' charred whisper, weaving a protective envelope of ease and affirmation. Clans intertwined beneath dense textiles and throws, offspring drawing toward guardians or kin, gazes laden with slumber, invigorated by the rhythmic symphony of inhalations and mild murmured phrases. Externally, existence exacted forbearance and solicitude. Cultivators advanced with intentional, wary treads through rigid mounds, implements thudding mildly against powder, staves essaying each progression to evade latent snares below the crusted facade. Equines fidgeted and pounded within their enclosures, dispersing veils of crystalline vapor into the frigid ether. Bovines aligned tightly, trading thermal solace in dense groupings. Fowl contracted into secluded recesses, still and subdued, plumage expanded to hoard each fragment of vitality. Each gesture embodied a prudent dialogue with the iced domain, a cadence of tenacity amid unceasing nip. In settled locales, beacons pulsed mildly like steadfast guides against avenues nearly devoured by powder. Kin proffered modest allotments of sustenance, timber, and tender uplift, deeds cultivating solidarity and optimism across the glacial vastness. Dialogues tempered, intentional, and laden with solicitude, a poignant affirmation that interpersonal comfort radiated most vividly when the realm felt most aloof and chilled. Youth unearthed ephemeral, tender instances of merriment. They imprinted palms into yielding layers, etched fine rhyme motifs along casings, and descended low swells leisurely, their subdued chuckles merging with the mild zephyrs. Such minute gleams of delight infused radiance into the pallid vista, subtly affirming that vitality could yet shimmer, even beneath the season's unyielding clasp. As dusk descended anew, gusts murmured once more over the glazed terrain, jostling sporadic frames. Nonetheless, indoors blazes radiated cozily, textiles amassed densely, and households converged, pulses stable and linked. Though the maelstrom thundered vast and ceaseless beyond enclosures, hearthward aspiration, solace, and serene fortitude forged an impregnable haven against the freeze. The 29th morning emerged beneath a vault subtly infused with faint violet, a nuanced shift from habitual slate, suggesting a remote aurora laboring through dense veils. The mantle, profound and ponderous, appeared chiseled by subdued radiance, catching mild sheens akin to dispersed crystalline dust over eaves, stands, and meadows. A profound muteness enveloped the vista, not vacant, but brimming with concealed vitality. Sporadic rime fractures beneath treads, mild keens threading glazed limbs, and remote bovine calls resonating from shelters. Within dwellings, routines grew more subdued than customary. Clans tarried about heaters, permitting thermal embrace to permeate stiffened extremities gradually. The ether bore subtle charred traces, fusing with mild sweetness from crisping loaves and desiccated pomes, lending a nurturing, intimate profundity to confined spaces. Offspring drew visages toward the blaze's radiance, entranced by wavering coals that etched fluid patterns over surfaces. Guardians advanced measuredly, nurturing cauldrons of hydration and subtly verifying extremities' retained circulation, palms grazing juvenile features in gentle affirmation. Externally, the onslaught appeared tempered, yet authoritative. Mounds gleamed like alabaster statuary, rime crafting fine filigree along perimeters and balustrades. Tillers aggressed leisurely, mindful that each imprint might dissolve in eddying veils shortly. Equines remained serene, vapors ascending and dissipating in the glacial morning, while bovines reclined mutually like animate furnaces, their mild tones a tranquil harmony. Even minor fauna, felines, canines, fowl, navigated with tempered wariness, perceiving the day's tenuous repose. In urban clusters, customary cadences morphed into serene adaptation. Conduits denoted by markers, lamps positioned diligently for orientation, and kin convened fleetingly at thresholds to convey tidings or extend minor solaces. Supplemental billets, a vessel of sparse broth, a murmured narrative for uplift. Such brief interchanges proved invaluable, tacit declarations that amid the iced realm, communal essence could yet thrive. The day's distinctive tranquility fostered contemplative pauses. Households serenely regarded rhyme artistry blooming on panes, appreciating elaborate spirals nature etched nocturnally. Youth observed raptly, digits outlining glacial motifs, as elders exchanged mild grins, spirits invigorated by elemental, transient splendor amid adversity. As twilight neared, breezes ascended mildly, not vehemently, but with tempered exhales brazing overhangs and animating powder into fine whirls. Indoors, blazes served as reliable guardians, textiles clutched firmly, and clans drew nearer, trading subdued phrases, faint chuckles, and the reassuring burden of attendance. The Arctic dominion persisted externally, yet hearthward optimism, subdued merriment, and familial thermal intimacy endured steadfast, a refuge amid the season's prolonged hold.
The 30th sunrise filtered a subtle sheen, tinting the pall in hues of tender apricot and subdued aureate, a mild vow that amid perpetual nip, radiance could yet infiltrate. The ether bore pristine rhyme and evergreen notes, a vivid, keen essence invigorating passages and rendering each inhalation vibrant. The mantle draped seamless, contoured into fanciful forms by zephyrs, diminutive vaults over barriers, fine crests along eaves, and concave recesses tracing nocturnal fauna passages. The domain appeared to hesitate, inhaling amid the tenuous allure of the iced aurora. Within abodes, coziness assumed heightened sanctity. Hearths snapped irregularly, billets rending with mild, abrupt bursts, the wavering radiance bathing countenances in mild aureate and citrine tones. Fragrances of stewed produce, sparse essences, and subtle charred resin fused with woolen textiles, weaving a tactile sanctuary. Households tarried about heaters, grasps grazing, limbs abutting, offspring reclining against progenitors in profound shared hush. Each subtle contact conveyed solace and devotion, a stable pulse against protracted palatial cycles.
Externally, the iced vista yielded minute, transient marvels. Pendulous glaze dangled from overhangs like vitreous blades, auroral gleams birthing faint spectra over mounds. Minor fauna emerged warily, delicate imprints crafting elaborate designs in pliant pallor. Equines whinnied mildly in shelters, vapors ascending from heated forms, while bovines repositioned and aligned, subdued resonances harmonizing with faint zephyr sighs through rhyme-laden stands. The realm, austere and implacable, unveiled subtle instances of fine poise, bestowing the forbearing with vistas of serene vitality and splendor. In populated hubs, revitalized fellowship permeated lanes. Kin halted amid labors to trade minor solicitudes, communal crusts, vessels of heated infusion or mere affirming gestures. Beacons pulsed gently, charting fatigued treads through profound piles, their aureate halos contrasting the argent azure of powder. Dialogues subdued yet substantive, narratives, counsel, and affirmations of collective confrontation against the iced solitude. Youth unearthed modest exploits in the mild radiance, imprinting palms into pliant medium for elaborate designs, scrutinizing rhyme filigree on casings, and descending powdery inclines warily, their tranquil glee wafting mildly over the hushed morning.
Even minutest prodigies, crystalline sparkles, contoured frozen twigs, or fine fauna trails emerged as cherished revelations, instances of wonder and delight in a realm transmuted to alabaster. As vesper descended, breezes ascended tenderly, threading eaves and animating powder into mild murmuring whirls. Indoors, clans nestled about blazes, textiles drawn firmly, dialogues serene and gentle. The tempest bellowed in remote surges, yet hearthward thermal refuge, mild exchange, and familial attendance forged a tranquil retreat. The exterior iced vastness endured immense and unyielding. Nonetheless, behind these barriers, vitality, aspiration, and the tenuous allure of interpersonal linkage persisted, resolute and soothing. The 31st morning unfolded under a vault subtly stroked with faint violet and tenuous aureate, as though the maelstrom granted a fleeting respite. The pall surged boundlessly, fluid and pristine, interrupted solely by fine mounds akin to diminutive eminences and glacial eddies where zephyrs had cavorted nocturnally. The ether bore serene stillness, vivid and enlivening, with mild evergreen traces blending lingering glacial acuity, lending the domain a keen, near-enchanted lucidity.
Within dwellings, coziness embodied existence's core. Hearths radiated mild, reliable luminescence, timber popping gently, saturating chambers with citrine patterns wavering over partitions and vaults. Essences of bubbling tubers, sparse essences, and mild sweetness from crisping loaves wove a nurturing shroud. Households converged nearer than ever, reclining mutually beneath dense textiles, grasps linked, dialogues subdued and calming. Offspring reclined crowns upon progenitors' limbs or cradles, lulled by the rhythmic harmony of known inhalations, the subdued cadence of murmured tales, and the gentle weight of a palm upon their diminutive forms. The tactile reassurance of proximity wove a subtle shield against the lingering chill. Externally, the rhyme-laden vista unfolded as a realm of serene prodigies. Pendulous glaze dangled like fine crystalline fixtures from eaves, intercepting subdued radiance to scatter minute spectra over iced meadows. Equines repositioned in shelters, treads mild, and vapors ascending warmly into the pristine ether, while bovines bunched densely, their subdued tones fusing with faint protests from rime-burdened beams. Even minor fauna navigated warily through the pall, imprinting fine, transient trails that dissolved nearly upon formation. Each facet of the glacial domain harbored nuanced vitality, a mild cadence of perseverance and continuity. In settled clusters, serene cadences persisted with solicitude and resolve. Beacons radiated gently against soaring mounds, charting kin along slender conduits and evoking solace and fellowship. Modest deeds, a divided billet for the blaze, a vessel of infusion, a fleeting phrase of uplift, bore profundity exceeding their scale. Every exchange fortified unseen communal filaments, affirming that interpersonal linkage could radiate vividly amid the most hushed and aloof expanses. Youth venturing into the tranquil aurora unearthed marvel in minutia. They etched encased digits over rime-veiled casings, imprinted palms into yielding powder, and descended mild inclines leisurely, their damped glee brimming with radiance. The slightest revelations, a glistening flake, an encased foliage, the filigree of glaze on a pane, transformed into cherished gems, instances of tender merriment amid protracted iced cycles. As twilight neared, breezes murmured gently, threading stands and encircling eaves. Indoors, households converged deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene and mild. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom endured immense and implacable. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, aspiration, and the subdued, resolute vigor of kinship crafted a retreat no season could infiltrate. The 32nd morning enveloped in a tenuous glacial mist. The vault spanned a mild progression from subdued argent to faint azure at the verge, evoking a distant aurora. The pall surged over meadows and avenues like an immense pristine tableau, mirroring dim radiance in a gentle sheen. Mounds eddied into graceful arcs and masked troughs, concealing known conduits and remolding the vista into a hushed, ethereal infinity. The ether bore a piercing lucidity laced with subtle encased evergreen and mineral glaze notes, each inhalation underscoring the onslaught's unyielding sway for venturers. Within abodes, the solace of blaze and kinship grew ever more revered.
Heaters snapped mildly, trailing tender citrine luminescence wavering over partitions and vaults. Fragrances of bubbling essences, parboiled tubers, and mild sweetness from crisping loaves permeated, intertwining with subtle charred resin. Clans nestled mutually, enveloped in stratified weaves and throes. Offspring reclined upon cradles or drew toward guardians, gazes somnolent, spirits fortified by the rhythmic symphony of murmured phrases, the mild weight of a grasp, or the languid shared exhalation in serene adjacency. Externally, existence upheld its wary, forbearing harmony. Cultivators traversed profound mounds with calculated advances, implements and staffs assaying the crusted facade to secure viability and conduits for herds. Equines pounded gently, heated vapors spiraling into the nip. Bovines aligned proximally, subdued tones resonating within shelters. Fowl and lesser beasts contracted into recesses, hoarding thermal reserves. The iced domain exacted deference, restraint, and a serene, systematic demeanor, each gesture intentional and tempered. In urban hubs, lamps pulsed mildly, like steadfast guides through slender glacial passages. Kin traded minor solaces, an additional fuel cluster, a divided allotment, or the tranquil affirmation of attendance. Each solicitude bolstered linkages and echoed that amid seclusion, communal essence endured. Tones mild and resolute, infusing comfort, motivation, and the tacit awareness of shared confrontation against the tempest. Youth persisted in unearthing nuanced delights amid the pallid vista. They etched fine rhyme motifs on casings with encased digits, imprinted diminutive palms into pliant powder to craft fanciful forms, and descended modest swells tenderly. Their subdued glee ascended like tenuous embers, invigorating spirits even amid the glacial hush. Each minor merriment affirmed that marvel could endure, tenuous yet intact, amid the protracted, unceasing season. As vesper descended, breezes altered course and murmured through rhyme-laden limbs, clattering frames in mild, rhythmic cadences. Indoors, blazes radiated evenly, textiles amassed densely, and households converged, dialogues serene and gentle. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom persisted immense and implacable. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, linkage, and subdued fortitude forged a haven no rhyme could breach.
The 33rd morning emerged beneath a vault subtly brushed with faint glacial rose, the inaugural nuanced hue piercing the customary slate shroud. The pall rested ponderous and pristine, molding into mild, surging eminences that absorbed all resonance, rendering the domain both boundless and profoundly intimate in its muteness. Zephyrs moderated from prior vehemence, bearing solely faint rustles of encased foliage grazing mutually, and sporadic remote corvid cries resonating mildly over the serene vastness. Within dwellings, routines pulsed in a gentle, intentional harmony. Hearths sustained reliable radiance, illumination wavering over partitions, weaves, and weathered plank bases. Essences of bubbling stocks, abundant with tubers and subtle seasonings, interwove with charred heater whispers and the nurturing trace of crisping loaves. Clans reclined mutually, stratified beneath dense textiles and throws, grasps linked and crowns drawn near. Offspring, soothed by coziness and kinship, oscillated between repose and semi-aware intrigue, entranced by the mild blaze sheen and the fluid patterns it etched.
Externally, the iced vista brimmed with serene prodigies, pendulous glaze suspended like vitreous ornaments from eaves, intercepting subdued aurora in faint gleams. Equines repositioned in shelters, mild whinnies and visible vapors punctuating the repose. Bovines reclined proximally, trading mild, calming tones. Fowl bunched compactly, plumage expanded like tender veils, while minor fauna sallied warily, imprinting fine, transient trails swiftly reclaimed by sifts. The terrain, austere yet vibrant with nuanced activity and serene tenacity. In populated centers, the mantle had transmuted avenues into chiseled alabaster passages, lamps yielding cozy, mild radiance over mounds. Kin traded deeds of solicitude, a cluster of timber, a heated vessel, or an affirming phrase. Each modest motion evolved into an essential tether, echoing collective perseverance and subdued communal essence amid the iced realm. Exchanges mild yet profound in significance, nurturing linkage and optimism. Notwithstanding the unceasing season, youth unearthed fresh merriments in minutiae, imprinting digits into rhyme-veiled panes for fanciful motifs, sketching designs in yielding powder, or descending brief, pliant inclines tenderly, their veiled glee ascending like minute embers into the argent ether, suffusing the glacial domain with radiance and comfort.
Even the minutest instances, the gleam of rime on a twig, the arc of a fauna imprint, the remote zephyr murmur, transformed into valued revelations, nuanced yet resonant. As obscurity enveloped, breezes bore a mild, resolute drone over eaves and through stands, animating powder into fine, elaborate whirls. Indoors, blazes radiated cozily, textiles clutched firmly, and households drew nearer, dialogues serene, calming, and gentle. The Arctic fury thundered beyond, unyieldingly and boundlessly. Nonetheless, behind these enclosures, vitality, affection, and subdued tenacity crafted a retreat impervious to rime, a haven of thermal refuge, aspiration, and perpetual linkage. The 34th sunrise filtered a tenuous, near-otherworldly radiance, as though the seasonal vault had mellowed its severity. The pall surged seamlessly, pliant and powdery in locales, chiseled into keen zephyr-etched crests elsewhere. The ether bore a nuanced glacial acuity and the mild sweetness of remote evergreens, a serene echo that existence lingered beyond the iced muteness. Mild blasts murmured through denuded limbs, dispersing minute flakes like strewn argent blossoms.
Within abodes, the solace of blaze and kinship assumed a hallowed essence. Hearths sustained even luminescence, citrine ripples wavering over partitions, weaves, and bases lightly dusted with mild cinders. Fragrances of bubbling tubers, robust stocks, and sweetened gruels fused with heaters' charred ease, weaving a tender protective envelope. Clans reclined proximally, offspring aligned against guardians or kin, gazes somnolent, inhalations languid and stable. Each murmured phrase, each mild palm on a limb conveyed an unspoken vow, security, devotion, and persistence notwithstanding the tempest's boundless sway. Externally, routines unfolded in minute, gentle cadences. Cultivators advanced intentionally, assaying powder with staffs, grating conduits to outbuildings and fodder sites, safeguarding herds' coziness and viability. Equines repositioned, mild whinnies ascending with misty vapors. Bovines reclined laterally, trading thermal refuge and subdued, comforting resonances. Fowl and lesser beasts lingered contracted in concealed alcoves, plumage expanded against the bite. Even minutest deeds, the prudent dispersal of sustenance, the liberation of a slender trail, the tender graze of an encased grasp against a partition, embodied forbearing tenacity amid the iced domain. In urban clusters, lamps pulsed like diminutive guides through pall-laden avenues, yielding cozy aureate pools against facades and mounds. Kin traded minor solaces, a divided billet, a modest allotment, or a motivational murmur. Each motion fortified unseen communal filaments, infusing comfort and aspiration into the hushed, interred lanes. Dialogues mild, intentional, and profound in essence, a vital tether of linkage amid seclusion. Offspring persisted in seizing instances of serene marvel, etching fine rhyme motifs on casings, imprinting encased palms into pliant medium, and descending low eminences tenderly, their subdued glee ascending like thermal embers into the motionless ether. Each minor revelation, a glistening flake, the fine arc of an encased twig, a transient fauna imprint, was revered, affirming splendor and vitality endured notwithstanding the season's unyielding clasp.
As twilight neared, breezes altered, bearing a mild drone through eaves and stands, animating powder into elaborate eddying whirls. Indoors, households nestled nearer heaters, textiles amassed densely, dialogues mild, serene, and gentle. Though the Arctic fury thundered externally, hearthward thermal refuge, linkage, and subdued fortitude forged a retreat, a realm impervious to rhyme, brimming with aspiration, solace, and the mild persistence of existence. The 35th morning ascended beneath a vault of faint rime-tinted azure, veils attenuating sufficiently to suggest aurora laboring to infiltrate the iced vastness. The pall caught subtle crystalline sheens, each mote mirroring mild radiance, as though the terrain brimmed with dispersed gems. The ether lingered motionless yet keen, bearing nuanced encased evergreen soil and residual charred resin drifting from thence, crafting a fine juxtaposition between exterior severity and interior coziness. Within dwellings, coziness evolved into a revered observance. Hearths snapped mildly, citrine radiance bathing countenances, weaves, and suspended vessels swaying gently. Essences of bubbling stalks, crisping loaves, and subtle spiced sweetness forged a nurturing embrace. Clans tarried about heaters, diminutive grasps clutched firmly. Each gaze, each mild contact, and each murmured affirmation bore a tacit vow, refuge, devotion, and persistence amid the tempest's boundless sway. Externally, the pall-bound domain embodied serene juxtapositions. Rime-sheathed stands gleamed like vitreous carvings, limbs arching under glacial burdens. Equines pounded mildly in shelters, heated vapors spiraling into the nip. Bovines reclined proximally, subdued resonances akin to a tender refrain. Fowl lingered contracted, plumage expanded against the bite, while sporadic minor fauna, rodents, lagomorphs, traversed mounds lightly, imprinting brief designs swiftly reclaimed by powder. The iced realm exacted mindfulness and restraint, each gesture a tempered coexistence with the severe season. In settled hubs, beacons yielded aureate aureoles over pall-veiled avenues, charting slender conduits hewn through mounds. Kin exchanged modest deeds of solicitude, extending a billet for the blaze, proffering a heated vessel, or providing mild navigation through the pall. Such instances, elemental yet resonant, embodied profound expressions of communal essence, weaving comfort and optimism into the glacial muteness. dialogues tempered, subdued, and laden with significance, each conveying solace and linkage. Youth unearthed the lyricism concealed within the season's severity. They imprinted digits into pliant powder to etch transient motifs, marveled at rhyme blossoms spiraling finely on casings, and descended mild swells with serene chuckles ascending like embers into the motionless ether. Every minor revelation, every hushed gleam of merriment affirmed that vitality, marvel, and fortitude could flourish, tenuous yet intact, amid unceasing rhyme. As obscurity enveloped, breezes altered to a mild exhale, traversing eaves and through stands, animating minute veils in tender arcs through the subdued beacon radiance. Indoors, blazes radiated evenly, textiles amassed densely, and households converged deeper, dialogues serene and gentle. Beyond enclosures, the maelstrom bellowed remotely and boundlessly. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, affection, and the mild, perpetual harmony of existence crafted a retreat, hushed, resolute, and impervious to the season's glacial clasp. The 36th sunrise unfolded in tenuous repose, the vault a gentle hue of subdued aureate laced with argent, as though celestial radiance merely murmured through persistent veils. The pall surged boundlessly, catching mild sheens in wan illumination, its facade contoured by fine zephyrs into undulating designs akin to petrified swells. The ether rang vivid and enlivening, bearing subtle encased evergreen glaze and the nuanced loamy trace of pall-laden meadows. Even the faint resonance of remote beasts lent a mild cadence to the iced hush. Within dwellings, routines assumed a ceremonial poise. Hearths radiated cozily, etching wavering patterns over partitions, bases, and stratified coverings upon weathered seats and berths. Essences of bubbling stocks, enriched with tubers and scattered seasonings, fused with the mild sweetness of crisping loaves and subtle charred whispers, enveloping chambers in nurturing strata. Clans reclined proximally, nestled beneath dense weaves and throws, offspring reclining crowns upon progenitors' cradles or torsos, lulled by the rhythmic symphony of mild tones and tranquil inhalations.
Each grasp clutched, each murmured phrase, each serene grin evolved into an essential mooring of affirmation against the unceasing exterior nip. Externally, perseverance pulsed in nuanced, forbearing cadences. Cultivators navigated mounds warily, staffs assaying the crusted medium for secure advances, grading conduits to outbuildings and troughs. Equines repositioned in enclosures, treads mild, nares dispersing tender vapor bursts into the glacial ether. Bovines reclined laterally for insulation, trading subdued, satisfied resonances. Fowl contracted into recesses, plumage expanded against the bite, while minor fauna traversed lightly, imprinting transient designs nearly instantly veiled by sifts. Each modest deed bore intent, forging a languid, resolute harmony of tenacity against the tempest. In populated centers, lamps pulsed mildly like steadfast guides along pall-obstructed avenues, yielding cozy aureoles upon glazed facades and eaves. Kin traded minor solaces and a supplemental billet, a vessel of heated stock, or a fleeting motivational murmur. Each motion fortified linkages, echoing that amid seclusion, fellowship could endure. Tones mild, intentional, and infused with solicitude, conveying affirmation through the iced lanes. Offspring unearthed serene merriments in nuanced shifts. They etched rhyme-laden motifs on casings, descended powdery inclines leisurely, or imprinted encased palms into pliant medium for fanciful imprints. Even the minutest elements, a glistening pendant, the arc of an encased twig, a transient fauna trail, were revered as gems, tenuous echoes that splendor and vitality persisted, fragile yet tenacious amid the season's prolonged hold. As twilight neared, breezes ascended in a mottled, eddying murmur, clattering frames and animating flakes in tender whirls. Indoors, blazes radiated evenly, textiles clutched firmly, and households drew nearer, dialogues serene and gentle. Though the Arctic fury persisted vast and unyielding beyond barriers, hearthward thermal refuge, interpersonal linkage, and subdued fortitude forged a perpetual retreat, a mild haven against the glacial obscurity. The 37th morning unfolded beneath a vault subtly infused with tender violet and subdued argent, a mild echo that even the most protracted seasons harbored transient splendor. The pall rested dense and seamless, contoured into surging mounds and masked troughs by ceaseless zephyrs.
Each arc and crest intercepted wan radiance, catching faint gleams akin to dispersed gems. The ether mang vivid, near vibrant, bearing nuanced evergreen, encased soil, and remote charred traces, fusing into a serene essence of the season itself. Within dwellings, coziness embodied a hallowed cadence. Hearths snapped evenly, citrine illumination wavering over partitions, weaves, and weathered plank bases. Fragrances of bubbling tubers, sweetened gruels, and crisping loaves permeated, intertwining with mild heater resin. Clans reclined proximally, stratified beneath dense textiles and throws, offspring reclining crowns upon progenitors' cradles or torsos. Each murmured phrase, mild palm on a limb, or subdued shared exhale conveyed a tacit affirmation. Existence endured resolute, secure, and integral, notwithstanding the exterior tempest. Externally, routines pulsed with intentional restraint. Cultivators traversed profound mounds leisurely, staffs gripped to assay stability, implements grating prudently to forge viable conduits to outbuildings and fodder sites. Equines repositioned, mild whinnies ascending as heated vapors spiraled into the glacial morning.
Bovines aligned laterally, trading subdued, comforting resonances, while fowl bunched compactly in recesses, plumage expanded to hoard reserves. Even minor fauna, lagomorphs, rodents, or wandering felines navigated warily, imprinting transient designs in the pall, instances of vitality subtly inscribed in alabaster. In settled clusters, lamps radiated mildly like steadfast guides along slender passages, their aureate halos tender against the argent vastness. Kin proffered modest deeds of solicitude, a billet for the blaze, a vessel of heated stock, or an affirming murmur to alleviate unease. Such motions, nuanced yet resonant, bore deep import, fortifying communal filaments of collective tenacity and serene optimism amid the iced domain. Tones mild, prudent, and infused with solicitude, a resolute filament of comfort amid seclusion. Youth unearthed nuanced marvels in the season's repose. They imprinted diminutive palms into pliant powder, etched rhyme motifs along casings, and descended mild inclines warily, their subdued glee shimmering like minute thermal embers in the pristine ether. Even the minutest elements, a glistening pendant, the arc of an encased twig, or fine petal imprints, evolved into valued revelations, echoes that vitality endured, gentle yet intact.
As obscurity enveloped, breezes ascended in a mild, eddying murmur, threading eaves and stands, animating veils in tender whirls. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles clutched firmly, dialogues serene and soothing. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom persisted immense and unyielding. Nonetheless, hearthwood thermal refuge, affection and subdued fortitude crafted an impregnable retreat, a mild haven amid the glacial obscurity. The 38th sunrise emerged in a realm muted and tender. The vault spanned a fine hue of faint turquoise, subtly powdered with rime-edged veils. The pall surged in boundless fluid expanses, sporadically interrupted by concealed troughs where zephyrs had etched mild concavities. Each facade caught tenuous sheens in subdued radiance, motes intersecting scant gleams as though the terrain donned a fine cerement of gems. The ether bore vivid lucidity, laced with evergreen rime and nuanced residual charred resin ascending from vents. Within abodes, coziness grew ever more revered. Hearths snapped with varied cadence, trailing wavering citrine luminescence that mellowed every recess. Essences of robust stocks, parboiled tubers, and subtle treacle traces fused with loamy heater resin.
Clans converged about heaters, enveloped in dense weaves and throes, offspring reclining against progenitors' limbs or cradles. The subdued cadence of tones, sporadic melodic refrains, and mild grasps upon heated forms wove a nurturing shroud of serenity and affirmation, safeguarding spirits from the unceasing exterior nip. Externally, perseverance upheld a forbearing, resolute harmony. Cultivators navigated mounds prudently, implements rasping glacial strata while forging accesses to outbuildings and troughs. Equines repositioned, dispersing heated vapor veils into the iced aurora. Bovines clustered tightly, trading subdued, reassuring residences in the hush. Fowl contracted into protected recesses, plumage expanded like tender veils. Even minor fauna, rodents, lagomorphs, or wandering felines, sallied warily, imprinting fine trails swiftly veiled by sifting powder. Each gesture evolved into a serene interplay with the iced vista, a tempered dialogue with the season's implacable hold. In populated centers, lamps pulsed mildly like serene watchers along slender pall-obstructed avenues. Kin exchanged modest deeds of solicitude. A heated vessel, supplemental timber for the blaze, a mild phrase murmured across thresholds. Such motions, nuanced yet vital, served as essential moorings of optimism, intertwining collectives amid seclusion.
Dialogues tempered, intentional, and soothing, a filament of comfort woven into the glacial muteness. Youth unearthed splendor concealed in minutia. They etched rime filigree on casings, imprinted encased palms into yielding powder for transient forms, and descended pliant inclines leisurely, their subdued glee shimmering like minute thermal embers. Each minor revelation, a fine mote, the gleam of rime on a twig, or an ephemeral petal design, affirmed that vitality, marvel, and fortitude endured, fragile yet intact at the season's core. As obscurity enveloped, breezes eddied through eaves and limbs with a mild exhale, elevating unbound flakes into languid, mesmerizing whirls. Indoors, households converged deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene and calming. Though the maelstrom persisted immense and unceasing beyond barriers, hearthward thermal refuge, linkage, and subdued tenacity forged a retreat, a haven of solace and aspiration against the glacial obscurity. The 39th morning ascended beneath a vault subdued with opalescent slate veils, faint aureate traces grazing the verge where celestial radiance labored to emerge.
The pall surged boundlessly, fluid and pristine, molding into mild inclines and shallow concavities subtly reshaped by Zephyr's tender graze. Each mound caught tenuous sheens, motes dispersing wan illumination in minute, transient flickers. The ether rang vivid and keen, laced with loamy and cased terrain, mild evergreen sweetness, and residual coziness from remote vents. Within dwellings, coziness embodied its own hallowed refuge. Hearths snapped mildly, citrine patterns wavering over partitions, bases, and stratified coverings heaped for ease. Fragrances of bubbling stocks, sparse gruels, and crisping loaves interwove with charred heater whispers, weaving a serene shroud. Clans reclined about heaters, offspring aligned against progenitors' flanks, gazes somnolent in nurturing repose. The mild cadence of murmured phrases, tender grasps grazing features, and communal chuckles forged a tacit sense of inviolability, the tempest beyond powerless to infringe upon hearthside wholeness. Externally, the iced domain blended serene trial with nuanced allure. Cultivators navigated profound mounds warily, staffs assaying the medium as implements etched slender conduits to outbuildings and troughs. Equines repositioned, dispersing heated vapors in tender veils, while bovines aligned proximally, subdued tones akin to mild refrains. Fowl burrowed in protected alcoves, plumage expanded, while minor fauna, wary yet resolute, imprinted transient designs swiftly reclaimed by sifts. Each deed embodied a tempered interplay with the season, a forbearing harmony of continuity notwithstanding the nip. In urban clusters, lamps pulsed mildly, like vigilant custodians along pall-veiled lanes, their cozy radiance mellowed by idle veils. Kin proffered minor solaces, a heated vessel, divided allotment, timber for the blaze, or a subdued motivational murmur. Each motion, elemental yet resonant, fortified fellowship, echoing that amid seclusion, interpersonal linkage and aspiration could flourish. Dialogues subdued yet laden with import, a vital tether of affirmation in the iced repose. Offspring unearthed enchantment in minutia. They etched elaborate rhyme designs along casings, imprinted encased palms into pliant medium for fine forms, and descended low inclines leisurely, their faint yet luminous glee in the hushed aurora.
Every minute revelation, a glistening pendant, an encased foliage, or the fine arc of a fauna imprint, transformed into a valued shard of splendor, evidence that vitality endured, fragile yet intact, even beneath the season's unceasing clasp. As twilight descended, breezes ascended mildly, threading through eaves and limbs, elevating unbound motes into languid, entrancing whirls. Indoors, households converged deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene, gentle, and affirming. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom lingered immense and implacable. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, affection, and subdued tenacity crafted a haven impervious to rhyme, a retreat of solace, aspiration, and perpetual interpersonal linkage. The 40th morning of this monumental Arctic siege emerged beneath a vault streaked with mild hues of violet and argent, as though the celestial expanse itself moderated its tempo to echo the iced domain beneath. The pall surged over meadows,
eaves and avenues in fluid, catching sheened expanses, contoured into tender undulations by Zephyr's serene craftsmanship. The ether bore a vivid, enlivening lucidity, faintly laced with evergreen rhyme and the nuanced coziness of remote heaters, a serene echo of existence persevering beyond the glacial muteness. Within dwellings, coziness embodied both solace and observance. Hearths snapped tenderly, citrine gleams rippling over weaves, weathered plank bases, and suspended vessels swaying mildly. Fragrances of robust stalks, parboiled produce, and sweetened loaves fused with subtle charred resin, forging a nurturing shroud. Clans tarried about heaters, offspring reclining into cradles or aligning against progenitors. Inhalations languid and stable, lulled by the subdued harmony of murmured phrases and tender contacts. Each gaze exchanged, each grasp clutched, and each subdued affirmation bolstered the tenuous yet resolute perception of inviolability amid these enclosures. Externally, routines pulsed with intentional forbearance and serene tenacity. Cultivators navigated profound mounds prudently, assaying with staffs, grading accesses to outbuildings, troughs, and fodder sites. Equines repositioned, pounding mildly as heated vapors spiraled into misty veils, while bovines reclined proximally, subdued resonances akin to a tender refrain. Fowl lingered contracted in concealed alcoves, plumage expanded to hoard reserves. Even minor fauna, rodents, lagomorphs, wandering felines, sallied warily, imprinting transient designs swiftly reclaimed by sifts. Each motion embodied a cadence of perseverance, a tempered interplay with the glacial vista. In populated centers, lamps pulsed like serene custodians along slender passages, their cozy halos illuminating pall-veiled thresholds and facades. Kin traded deeds of solicitude, a heated vessel, a cluster of timber, a motivational phrase murmured over interred porches. Each motion, elemental yet resonant, fortified linkages and echoed that collective essence could flourish even amid profound seclusion. Dialogues mild, intentional, and soothing, a filament of comfort spanning the alabaster vastness. Youth unearthed tender merriments concealed in the season's repose. They imprinted encased palms into pristine medium, sketching forms and imprinting transient designs, descended powdery inclines leisurely, and marveled at rhyme filigree spiraling along casings. Even the minutest elements, a glistening pendant, the fine contour of an encased twig, or a diminutive petal trail, evolved into gems, instances of marvel and linkage amid the protracted, unceasing rhyme.
As obscurity descended, breezes ascended mildly, threading eaves and stands, animating powder into tender, entrancing eddies. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles clutched firmly, dialogue serene, calming and affirming. The Arctic fury thundered vast and unyielding beyond enclosures. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, affection, and subdued fortitude forged a retreat, a mild haven of aspiration, solace, and perpetual vitality amid the iced domain. The 41st sunrise filtered beneath a tender, subdued vault, infused with faint rose and argent, as though the aurora itself murmured into being. The pall surged over the vista in seamless expanses, mounds chiseled into graceful, sweeping arcs by Zephyr's serene labor. Each facade caught
tenuous sheens, mirroring mild radiance and lending the glacial realm a tenuous, near-enchanted gleam. The ether rang vivid and enlivening, faintly laced with evergreen, rhyme, and remote charred coziness, a poignant echo of existence persevering amid the unceasing nip. Within abodes, thermal refuge pulsed with gentle ritual. Blazes radiated mild, reliable luminescence, wavering patterns over partitions and bases. Essences of bubbling tubers, sparse stalks, and crisping loaves wove a nurturing envelope. Households converged nearer than ever, reclining mutually beneath dense textiles, grasps linked, dialogues subdued and calming. Offspring drew toward kin, breathing languidly, soothed by the rhythmic symphony of familial attendance. Externally, the domain brimmed with serene allure and nuanced trial. Cultivators advanced warily through mounds, assaying with implements to liberate conduits. Equines repositioned mildly, vapors ascending in tender halos. Bovines aligned for insulation, trading mild resonances. Fowl and minor beasts lingered in recesses, conserving reserves amid the hush. In urban hubs, beacons yielded cozy guidance through veiled lanes. Kin proffered solaces, fortifying communal filaments. Youth persisted in tender discoveries, their subdued merriment infusing the vista with subtle radiance. As twilight deepened, breezes murmured, animating motes in fine whirls. Indoors, clans intertwined, blazes steadfast, dialogues gentle. The maelstrom endured beyond, yet hearthward vitality and linkage crafted an impervious haven. But on this 41st day, something shifted ever so subtly. The pale rose in the sky lingered a fraction longer. The air carried a faint, almost imperceptible softening at its edges, and the wind's whisper held a note not of warning, but of quiet farewell. Families noticed it in small ways, a slightly less urgent crackle in the fire, a breath that fogged the window pane a touch less thickly, the distant drip of melting ice from an eve that had stood silent for weeks. Hope, long nurtured in hushed circles around the hearth, stirred with new life. The great Arctic grip, relentless for so long, showed the first fragile signs of yielding. Spring, distant yet undeniable, began its slow approach, promising renewal to a land that had endured the deepest winter in memory. Within dwellings, coziness evolved into a hallowed refuge for both form and essence. Hearths radiated evenly, citrine illumination wavering over weaves, partitions, and weathered plank bases. Fragrances of bubbling stocks, parboiled produce, and sweetened loaves interwove with mild heater resin, forging a nurturing shroud. Clans reclined proximally, offspring aligning against guardians or kin, gazes somnolent, inhalations languid and stable. The mild harmony of murmured phrases, tender contacts, and communal chuckles wove a fabric of solace, affirming that behind these enclosures they remained secure and cherished. Externally, routines pulsed with serene intentionality. Cultivators traversed profound mounds prudently, implements rasping glacial facades while etching viable conduits to outbuildings, troughs, and fodder sites. Equines repositioned and whinnied mildly, heated vapors ascending in transient veils into the nip. Bovines aligned laterally, trading subdued, reassuring tones. Fowl contracted into alcoves, plumage expanded, while minor fauna, Lagomorphs, rodents, and sporadic vulpines navigated warily across the catching pall. Each gesture embodied a forbearing interplay with the iced domain, a tempered cadence demanding deference and mindfulness. In populated centers, lamps pulsed mildly like serene custodians along slender, obstructed avenues. Kin exchanged modest solaces, a billet for the blaze, a vessel of heated infusion, a reassuring phrase murmured across interred thresholds. Such deeds, nuanced yet resonant, fortified communal filaments, echoing that interpersonal linkage could flourish amid the most profound seclusion. Dialogues tempered, laden with comfort, a filament of optimism spanning the alabaster vastness. Youth unearthed instances of serene merriment in minutia. They etched rhyme spirals along casings, imprinted palms into pristine medium for elaborate designs, and descended pliant inclines leisurely. Even the minutest prodigies, a glistening pendant, the fine contour of an encased twig, or a transient petal trail, evolved into valued shards of vitality and splendor. Tender echoes that marvel and fortitude persisted, fragile yet intact amid the tempest's hold. As obscurity enveloped, breezes altered mildly, threading eaves and stands, animating unbound motes in languid, entrancing eddies. Indoors, households converged deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene, gentle, and calming. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom lingered immense and unceasing. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, aspiration, and the subdued harmony of kinship forged a retreat, a mild haven amid the season's clasp. The 42nd morning unfolded beneath a vault subtly stroked with tender apricot and argent. The auroral radiance diffused like fine silk over the boundless pall. Each mound caught rime sheens, contoured into fine crests and troughs by Zephyr's serene touch.
The ether bore a nuanced essence of encased evergreen soil and remote charred coziness, infusing each inhalation with tranquil lucidity. Even the faintest resonances, a tread grating powder, a remote equine call, resonated amplified, serene in their elemental purity. Within abodes, coziness assumed hallowed essence. Hearths sustained reliable luminescence, citrine patterns dancing over weaves, partitions, and bases lightly veiled in mild cinders. Fragrances of stocks, crisping loaves, and subtly sweetened gruels permeated, intertwining with heaters' resinous whisper, enveloping chambers in a tender shroud. Households reclined about heaters, offspring aligning against progenitors or kin, gazes partially veiled in nurturing repose. The subdued cadence of tones, tender grasps upon limbs, forged moorings of affirmation amid the iced exterior. Externally, routines pulsed in intentional cadences. Cultivators navigated profound mounds with forbearing diligence, assaying and grating accesses with prudent solicitude. Equines pounded mildly, dispersing heated vapor bursts spiraling into the glacial aurora, while bovines reclined proximally, subdued resonances akin to a mild refrain. Fowl expanded plumage in recesses, and minor fauna, lagomorphs, rodents, vulpines, sallied warily, imprinting transient designs in the catching pall, each gesture a serene interplay with the season's repose.
Offspring unearthed nuanced merriment in minutia. Rime whirls along casings, fine mote designs, or faint pedal imprints evolved into gems. Descending powdery inclines leisurely, imprinting palms into pristine medium, or sketching forms along glazed panes, they affirmed that splendor and vitality endured, fragile yet tenacious, amid the maelstrom's hold. But on this 42nd day, the subtle shift grew unmistakable. The pale peach light held firmer, the air's edge softened imperceptibly, and eaves began to weep with tentative drops, melting rime trickling in faint rivulets. Families sensed it keenly, a hearth flame burning brighter with less fuel, breaths fogging panes less densely, the distant chorus of drips echoing like nature's quiet sigh of relief. Hope, steadfastly kindled through endless nights, blossomed anew. The great Arctic onslaught, which had gripped the land in record depths for over a month, temperatures plunging to historic lows, snowfalls shattering century-old marks in cities from the Gulf to the lakes, finally showed unmistakable cracks. Renewal, though gradual, drew nearer, heralding thaw to a nation that had weathered one of the most severe cold waves in recorded history. Spring's promise, faint yet certain, whispered on the horizon. As dusk settled, breezes ascended tenderly, eddying through eaves and limbs, elevating unbound motes into languid, entrancing spirals. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles clutched firmly, dialogue serene, gentle, and laden with subdued solace. Beyond barriers, the Arctic fury persisted immense and unyielding. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, affection, and the mild cadence of kinship forged a haven, a mild retreat of aspiration, ease, and perpetual vitality amid the glacial obscurity. The 43rd morning unfolded beneath a vault subtly brushed with tender apricot and argent, the auroral radiance diffusing across pall-veiled meadows in a serene, mild sheen. Zephyrs had moderated nocturnally, rendering the mantle's facade fluid and pristine in locales, interrupted solely by tender crests chiseled by prior blasts. The ether rang vivid and untainted, bearing nuanced evergreen rime and faint charred traces from remote heaters, infusing each inhalation with tranquil lucidity and subtle coziness. Within dwellings, the heater embodied the abode's core. Hearths sustained resolute radiance, citrine patterns wavering over weaves, weathered plank bases, and partitions adorned with seasoned ledges. Fragrances of bubbling stocks, crisping loaves, and mild spiced gruels permeated, fusing with the heater's resinous whisper, enveloping chambers in a nurturing shroud. Clans reclined proximally, offspring aligning against guardians or kin, gazes somnolent and spirits serene. Each mild contact, subdued murmur, or communal grin fortified a perception of inviolability and kinship amid the unceasing exterior season. Externally, routines pulsed with serene forbearance. Cultivators navigated mounds leisurely, assaying with staffs, grating slender conduits to outbuildings, troughs, and fodder sites. Equines repositioned and whinnied mildly, heated vapors ascending in transient veils. Bovines reclined laterally, trading subdued, reassuring tones. Fowl contracted into alcoves, plumage expanded to hoard reserves. Even minor fauna, lagomorphs, rodents, sporadic vulpines sallied warily, imprinting transient designs swiftly reclaimed by sifts. Each gesture a forbearing interplay with the iced domain, a testament to tenacity and solicitude. Youth unearthed tender merriments in the pallid vista. They etched rhyme motifs along casings, imprinted palms into yielding medium for fine forms, and descended pliant inclines leisurely. Each minor revelation, a glistening pendant, an encased foliage, or a transient petal trail evolved into valued shards of splendor, a serene echo that marvel and fortitude flourished, fragile yet intact amid the season's hold. As vesper enveloped, breezes murmured mildly through eaves and stands, animating unbound motes in tender eddies. Indoors, households converged deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene, calming and gentle. Beyond barriers, the maelstrom lingered, immense and implacable. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, aspiration, and the subdued harmony of kinship crafted a retreat, a mild haven of solace and security amid the glacial obscurity. The 44th sunrise emerged beneath a vault mellowed by faint violet and tenuous aureate, the radiance diffusing tenderly over pristine pal fields. Each mound caught subtle sheens akin to dispersed vitreous dust, contoured into graceful swells by Zephyr's serene craftsmanship. The ether rang vivid, bearing nuanced evergreen rhyme and remote loamy traces, a mild reminder that existence lingered beyond the iced repose. Within abodes, coziness pulsed from heaters, saturating every recess with citrine illumination and soothing patterns.
Hearths snapped mildly, essences of bubbling stocks, crisping loaves, and subtly sweetened gruels fusing with charred ease, enveloping in a serene shroud. Clans reclined mutually, offspring aligning against progenitors, gazes somnolent in nurturing repose. Subdued murmurs, tender contacts, and faint communal chuckles forged a cadence of affirmation, a resolute pulse countering the nip beyond partitions. Externally, routines upheld intentional forbearance. Cultivators navigated pall-laden trails prudently, grating slender accesses to outbuildings and troughs. Equines repositioned in position, heated vapors forming fine veils, while bovines reclined laterally, trading mild, reassuring resonances. Fowl expanded plumage in recesses, and minor fauna, lagomorphs, rodents, vulpines, sallied warily, imprinting transient designs across the catching pall, each motion purposeful, a serene testament to tenacity and harmony in the iced domain. Offspring unearthed tender delights in the season's hush. They etched fine rhyme spirals along casings, descended powdery inclines leisurely, or imprinted encased palms into pliant medium for fanciful forms. Even minutest elements, a glistening pendant, the fine contour of an encased twig, or a diminutive petal trail, evolved into gems, fragile echoes of splendor and vitality, persisting amid the unceasing frost.
Yet on this 44th day, the subtle transformation deepened unmistakably. The faint gold in the sky lingered longer. Eaves wept with tentative rivulets as rhyme softened at edges, and the air carried a barely perceptible easing, inhalations less stinging, distant drips resounding like nature's tentative release. Families perceived it profoundly, flames sustaining brighter on scant fuel, vapors on panes thinning, the faint chorus of melting crystals from overhangs silent for weeks. Hope, steadfast through protracted nights, surged anew. The great Arctic onslaught of February 1899, one of the most severe cold waves in U.S. history, with record lows from the Gulf Coast, -2 degrees Fahrenheit in Tallahassee, to the plains, and heavy snow paralyzing the East Coast from February 11th through 14th, finally relented in its peak fury by mid-month. Warmer air infiltrated gradually in late February, initiating thaw amid lingering drifts, as historical records confirm the extreme phase concluding around Valentine's Day, with persistent cold easing toward March. Renewal, though measured, approached irrevocably, heralding verdant promise to a land that had withstood unprecedented depths of winter.
In settled centers, lamps pulsed mildly like serene custodians along avenues sealed by powder. Kin exchanged modest solaces, a heated vessel, a cluster of timber for the blaze, or a tender phrase of uplift murmured across interred thresholds. Such deeds, nuanced yet resonant, fortified communal filaments, echoing that linkage and optimism flourished amid profound seclusion. Dialogues subdued yet infused with solicitude, a filament of comfort traversing the hushed, rhyme-veiled lanes. Youth unearthed solace in the season's minutiae. They etched rhyme filigree along casings, imprinted palms into yielding medium for transient forms, and descended pliant inclines leisurely. Each minor revelation, a glistening pendant, an encased twig, or a fine petal trail, was revered, a serene echo that splendor, vitality, and marvel endured, fragile yet intact amid unceasing rhyme. As obscurity enveloped, breezes eddied tenderly through eaves and limbs, elevating unbound motes into languid, entrancing whirls. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles amassed densely, dialogues serene, gentle, and laden with subdued ease. Beyond barriers, the Arctic fury persisted immense and implacable. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, affection, and the resolute pulse of kinship forged a haven, a mild retreat of solace and endurance against the glacial obscurity. The 45th morning unfolded beneath a vault subtly infused with tender rose and faint aureate, as though the domain itself exhaled in respite after protracted severity. The pall rested dense and pristine over meadows and avenues, contoured into fluid, catching eminences that intercepted auroral radiance, dispersing it in serene flickers. The ether rang vivid yet tranquil, bearing nuanced evergreen, encased soil, and residual charred coziness, a mild affirmation that coziness, vitality, and fortitude persevered notwithstanding the tempest. Within dwellings, abodes embodied hallowed refuges against the glacial vastness. Hearths sustained resolute radiance, citrine patterns wavering over partitions, weaves, and weathered plank bases. Fragrances of bubbling stocks, crisping loaves, and subtly sweetened gruels enveloped every recess in a nurturing embrace. Clans reclined proximally, offspring aligning against progenitors' flanks, gazes somnolent, spirits resolute with kinship's vow. Murmured phrases, tender contacts, and mild communal chuckles wove a shroud of devotion, a serene pulse resonating through every nook. Externally, the iced domain pulsed with forbearing, tempered harmony. Cultivators upheld prudent labors, grating conduits, assessing shelters, and attending herds. Equines repositioned, dispersing heated vapors spiraling into the nip. Bovines reclined laterally, subdued tones drifting in accord. Fowl expanded plumage against the bite, while minor fauna, lagomorphs, rodents, vulpines, navigated warily across the pole, imprinting transient designs swiftly reclaimed by sifts. Each gesture mirrored serene tenacity, a testament to existence's patient continuity amid the season's repose. In urban clusters, lamps radiated gently, etching aureate aureoles over pall-laden lanes. Kin traded modest deeds of solicitude, a heated vessel, a divided billet, or an affirming murmur. Such motions, nuanced yet resonant, fortified unseen communal weaves, ensuring optimism and generosity persevered amid profound nip. Youth unearthed tender enchantment in minutia. They etched rhyme motifs along casings, imprinted palms into yielding medium for transient imprints, and descended powdery inclines leisurely. Every minor ember of marvel, a glistening pendant, the fine contour of an encased twig, a transient petal trail, served as a serene echo that vitality, splendor, and fortitude flourished, fragile yet resolute, beneath the season's most severe vault. As vesper enveloped, breezes murmured in mild, eddying cadence through eaves and stands, animating unbound motes in fine whirls. Indoors, households nestled deeper, blazes radiating evenly, textiles clutched firmly, dialogues serene, gentle, and calming. The maelstrom persisted immense and unyielding beyond enclosures. Nonetheless, hearthward thermal refuge, linkage, and subdued fortitude crafted a haven, a mild retreat brimming with affection, aspiration, and perpetual essence. The tempest had exacted its toll, yet they persevered. Spirits invigorated by proximity, psyches lulled by cadence and minor merriments, forms enveloped in weaves and blaze radiance. They could at last repose. The exterior realm lingered iced, boundless, and hushed, yet hearthward serenity, inviolability, and solace prevailed. Thank you for accompanying this odyssey through the monumental blizzard of 1899, one of the most extreme cold waves in American annals, with unprecedented freezes sweeping from the Gulf to the north and paralyzing snows entombing the east. May the serene coziness of this narrative envelop you as you ease into slumber. Close your eyes, inhale profoundly, and allow the mild cadence of vitality, affection, and fortitude to guide you into a tranquil night.